All right, it looks like it's recording. Everybody, this is Sam Dennehy, aka Halfass Customs, and this is Halfass Presents, the podcast. We're here with Rad Mcguire. He's a pretty good modeler, I think, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself and how he got into the hobby. So, Rad, go ahead. Tell us how you got in the hobby and a little bit about yourself.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I think I hate to brag on myself, but I think I've got the most interesting story on how I got in the hobby of building military models versus anyone else who's in the 187 scale club. Unfortunately, I used to do a lot of military simulations, combat simulations. It's basically uh, imagine paintball and airsoft on steroids. We're rolling around in real gear, real military vehicles. They have helicopters at these events. Or sometimes the military actually brings armor. And I fought from everywhere from Camp Shelby, all the way over to Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, all over Alabama. And in the middle of one of our combat ops, one of the guys on my team, who is a tank veteran from Iraq, said, just over the comms one day, says, "Hey, Rad, did you see that Humvee that just passed us? Man, you need to build a model of that, man. You could totally knock it out of the park." And next thing I know, I'm in the back of the truck, and it had to have felt like 109 degrees wearing all that gear, looking on eBay at HO scale models on what I'm buying. I bought like $50 worth of models in the back of a 6x6. And it's a little interesting, but it's building military models for me. Every one of them comes with a story because I've been approached by people all over the world about, either they're veterans or they're other military modelers like myself, and we're all sharing ideas with each other. A lot of these guys are in Germany, and the stuff these guys are doing in Germany are just unbelievable. The level of detail they pay attention to in our scale especially. And there's a guy in there's a guy down in South America who probably has over 2,000 military models to date, and they're all the U.S. based models.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, these guys come out of the woodworks. That I've noticed. It's like with you, Sam. You do the Hollywood cars, and I'm pretty sure you found people that you never thought you'd think of talking to from all
From
across.
all over the world, which is neat.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's learning stuff from these other modelers. We all learn different things from one another, and I think that's the best part about this hobby is it always surprises you when you least expect it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know when I first got into this hobby, I was kind of oblivious to what most people in this hobby did. I thought going into this hobby would be a lot like just the regular 125th, 124th scale model car world, where it's all about passenger vehicles. There's very little commercial vehicles, and it's not like a IPMS show where they have like figures and vehicles and sci-fi and boats and planes and ships and everything. So I come from that world, and I thought this little tiny scale hobby of ours was kind of the same thing, but boy, was I wrong. And it was neat coming into it, finding out how wrong I was, but seeing how welcome everybody was to it and how forthful they were with information about it and how to find stuff and look for stuff. And yeah, you're 100% correct on how nice everybody is in our scale hobby. It's
The
amazing.
first person I ever talked to in this hobby, just for vehicles, because I've been in the model trains for as long as I can remember. But I found the 187 scale vehicle club site my freshman year of high school, and that was over, 15 years ago. And I remember seeing one of Paul Knowles' maintenance way trucks. It was a green BN crew cab auger truck, and I thought that was the coolest truck I'd ever seen in my life. And I said, I don't care how much that truck costs, I want it. And
Right.
I remember emailing the 187 scale admin And I believe it was Bob Johnson. I emailed back then, and he said, well,
Right. Yeah, that's who it is.
let me see if Paul even wants to get in contact with you, because I'm this dorky little kid who had never even been in this version of the hobby. And Paul was and still is one of the nicest, most upfront, honest guys. And the first time I've ever met him was actually last year at the RPM meet. You know,
Yeah, he's a nice guy. Yeah.
to me, he's one of the best maintenance away modelers I think I've ever seen. It. And the man is just an encyclopedia of even the military stuff. Because I can go to him and say, hey, uh, did we have this back in the mid to late 90s? Oh yeah, you can use that. You can use the cut fees until like 2003, 2004. Or
That's awesome.
yeah, you put this armor package on that, but I have no idea what you're building with. I don't even know what an MRAP is, Radisson. Don't ask.
He doesn't know what it is, but he knows what time era that it'll fit for. That's pretty cool.
I thought the coolest part about last year's RPM was I drove over there with some buddies of mine in a Railroad Historical Society, and they said, yeah, man, if you need prototype pictures, this is the place to go. And I think in my personal collection, I have about 1,500 to 2,000 military pictures of military trains coming through my cities. And that's just
kidding.
And half the time that's me getting a call from a buddy of mine who works here with the local railroad company. He says, hey, I got W404, they're at Bell Street, they're coming your way. You got 5 minutes.
Oh,
I'm in the
wow.
truck. I'm gone, And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I work for a TV station, so every now and again, I use that. I'm TV press pass. I'm here to do a story on the railroad. Don't
That's awesome. Yeah, I work for our local cable company, and I don't get that pass. So you're one up on me.
And it's what's cool about the watching the military trains. In the past 8 years of photographing DoD movements coming through Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, is the vehicles have changed so dramatically in their looks and what we're actually using. Like, not to say anyone watching this is old, but a lot of y'all probably grew up looking at the Humvee, and the Humvee is out the door. It's gone. It should be phased out here within the next, I would say, 10 years. It's going to go the way of the
That's
Willie.
what I remember looking at. Just like I come from California, and I would see going through the deserts, just cars and cars and cars full of Humvees and all kinds of different military stuff that I know nothing about.
Well, the newest one, I'll hold this one up. This is a new kit by a company out of Germany called Arsenal M, and they actually just bought Roko mini tanks. This is a JLTV, a joint, I think it's Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, and this this prototypically is actually what has replaced the Humvee.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I just did an armored Humvee actually, so I can hold the two up, and the size difference on them is just insane. I would say I don't know why we needed to go bigger on the vehicles, because I think it's a little overkill, but
well, and it's a lot more steel and a lot more weight, right? So you'd have to have a much bigger engine to probably really get out of a quick situation, I would think.
Right, because with the Humvee, it went the same way as the Jeep. It's been modded and upgraded so many times, and at the end of the day, when we went to Iraq and the desert, and Afghanistan and Kuwait and all that, the biggest issue, in every single veteran and combat serviceman will tell you the same thing, is when you weigh those trucks down, your speed and your maneuverability goes right out the window, because they just built for that. I know someone up in North Alabama who actually bought a surplus Humvee from Anniston Army Depot, and he got the truck. They said, "Oh yeah, it's working perfectly. It's great. It's awesome." It was an M10 series truck, so we knew at one time it was armored. He got that truck, and the transmission was stripped because there was so much weight on that truck. It stripped the transmission.
Oh, wow.
So that's
That's crazy.
it's they've just reached the end of their service life. So when you're seeing these newer military trains, and when you're passing by your local armories, you're going to see more of the MRAPs, and you're going to see the Humvee for a long time, but they're not going to be in a combat role. You'll still see the paramedics, the fleet service trucks, and trucks they would keep around the base for because they're smaller. They're not really going to see combat. There's no need to put a big machine gun on them and stuff like that. So the Humvee will be around for a few more years at least. I hope so, because those trucks are
Just
fun.
not in combat use, though. Maybe
Right. Well,
just for rolling around the base, maybe just to get from one side to the other, but not in actual combat.
for the most part, a lot of them will special ops will still use them. The special ops guys I've seen actually did. This one was at the RPM last year, but I did actually a Special Forces Humvee.
Yeah, I
And
remember that one. That's
yeah,
cool.
this one it is done off of a Navy SEALs Humvee. That when I Googled Special Forces Humvee, that was like one of the first pictures that popped up, and I said, "Oh wow, that picture looks awesome. I got to model that." And you look at that versus something you see at like your National Guard armory, and you're like, "Wait, that doesn't even look like a Humvee you just built. Why?" And they modify the heck out of them for missions, and sometimes they're one use and they're done. And
Well, it's funny you mention the sort of the demise of the Humvee of present time, because I wonder, being that I build a lot of Hollywood vehicles and I watch a lot of movies, even though most of them are just crap anymore. I wonder how fast Hollywood is going to pick up on the new movement and stop putting all these Humvees in the movies like they do already, and then have people that know that they're not really even being in use, and they're like, that's not real. Darn it, Hollywood, catch up to the times.
there is actually, it was American Sniper, the Chris Kyle movie Clint Eastwood did a few years ago.
Yeah,
That one is
great
one of
movie.
oh yeah, an awesome book. Um, if you look if you really got to pay attention to the tour dates that he served, because if you're looking at the vehicles that are around him, they change, because he was there soon after we got into Baghdad, from what I understand, and we started seeing where these things called hillbilly gun trucks, and they were Humvees and the M923A2s, the 6x, and all these were primarily unarmored vehicles. So what we would do is, well, we can't order, just call up UPS and say, hey, I need an armored turret. Yeah, can you deliver it to Baghdad? They're gonna laugh in your face. So a lot of these mechanics started getting sheet metal, and they would weld huge sheet metal plating to the side of these trucks, Humvees and everything. And one of the scenes in American Sniper, you notice I think they're taking money to some sheik for information, but he's in a Humvee.
Yeah.
And you notice it's a hillbilly gun truck because they've got that sheet metal siding on the side. Versus the last mission he was in a Carmen MRAP, which we're still using. So you saw kind of the evolution of the military vehicle in that movie, which to me
That's interesting, because I don't know nothing about military vehicles except for I know what a Hummer is, or a Humvee. And I would never, ever have noticed that unless you just pointed that out.
oh
So
yeah, I mean,
that's neat.
well,
That's cool that you know that.
it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, because I love sitting down to just any kind of good movie and looking at the movie cars and the vehicles they use, but it annoys me when they get the uniform and the guns wrong. And
Well, yeah, I mean,
or,
for a person that knows this stuff, it should annoy you. It
or
annoys me when movies end up being stupid, and I know they spent millions and millions of dollars on them.
like Fast and the Furious, just him. But because to me, a perfect example was the A-Team. that is a great movie for the fact that that van is so iconic. And you look
Yeah.
at that van and you know where that van came from.
Right.
And to this day, I mean, I can go to work right now and talk to any of the guys there, and that these guys have all worked in some of these guys have worked in Hollywood, some of these guys have worked, up in New York at the national CBS affiliates. And I could say A-Team or The Love Boat or Gilligan's Island. And the one thing we always come back to is the A-Team. It's the only show where they shoot a 1,000 bullets in one episode and no one dies and no one gets hit. How is that possible?
Hollywood magic.
But subject of movie cars, you and William were talking, I believe it was last podcast, about how the era of iconic movie cars is out the window. Like we had the car from Bullitt, we had the motorcycle from The Great Escape, and even things like that. But I look back to my childhood from the '90s, and I look at the two most iconic movie cars I could think of was the Dodge Ram from Twister, because we all know that red Dodge Ram, and
Yeah.
in the back,
All those little things on the back of the bed to get shot up into the tornado.
and the big tank truck that just got dropped down on top of them.
Right.
And
I didn't even think of that truck. That's so funny because I was a teenager in the '90s, so we got to be relatively close in age, I'm thinking. I don't remember that being an iconic movie truck. So that's funny that you say that, because
it was that, and they had, I think, the Jeep International Harvester pickup truck. It was that ugly yellow and blue truck from it was the very first one that dropped down in front of them. Because I've watched that movie so much, I could pretty much quote it word for word. It's crazy. But in the other one, which is near and dear to my heart because it's my favorite movie, would be Jurassic Park. The Jurassic Park series has some of, I hate to say it, but it outdoes the DeLorean and Back to the Future on icons for me, because I like the DeLorean, I really do. I just can't fit in a DeLorean, But I mean, the 1993 Jeep Wranglers and the '90s Ford Explorers were some of the coolest trucks to me growing up, and to go to Universal growing up as a kid and seeing the actual screen used truck still displayed out there today was awesome.
It is.
And then you had the second one, the Lost World, that had the modified Fleetwood RV. And,
right.
I've
seen that built in this scale, but I think it's from overseas. I don't think anybody here in America has built it. I think someone in Europe somewhere built that RV at this scale from that movie.
What was cool is because up in North Alabama we have the Mercedes plant, and I found out through one of the Jurassic Park fan groups that I'm a part of, that one of the screen-used Mercedes from the Lost World, one of the camouflaged Mercedes, the T-Rex threw off the cliff. One of those is sitting in North Alabama, and it's taken everything in my power not to drive up there and just take the car.
Right. Well, I think it's Bosch. I think they make the Jurassic Park movie car combo set, and I think they're using that Mercedes or a Mercedes for their vehicle.
I've got that one, and I mean that whole movie to me, there was just something about early mid '90s, me as a kid seeing a T-Rex hit a man on the toilet and then chase shirtless Jeff Goldblum through the jungle in a Jeep. That was just awesome to me,
Well, it was awesome to a lot of people. I mean, that was, for its time, the most realistic dinosaur movie ever made. And what I remember hearing just about that movie is people thought it was so real that when that dinosaur went over the electrical fence to Jeff Goldblum's vehicle and breathed in it, they ran out of the theater thinking it was going to get him. I thought it was stupid, the whole idea of that story, but people really did that because it was in the newspaper.
I tell you, the one that's if you like books, you need to read the book because the book is absolutely terrifying. Because
I bet it is.
there were so many graphic scenes in that book that Spielberg wanted to put in the movie, but Universal wouldn't let him. And but I mean that to me, doing I eventually want to kind of shy away from the military modeling, and I think if I ever get into a movie car build, I want to do the Ford Explorer from Jurassic Park. I want to do both of them as they are brand freaking new, and I want to do one crushed in the mud.
That'd be
And
awesome.
because that is such a cool movie. I'm such a huge fan. I've decaled my truck for Jurassic Park.
Oh,
I kid you not.
that's cool.
I drive I drive a black GMC Canyon, and it's fully decked out in Jurassic Park regalia. And I've been stopped by so many people because the truck says park use only on the side of it. They go, "Oh, where's that park? Is it near here?" And
Right.
I just usually give them some BS directions to the safari park outside town.
Yeah. That's funny, but that's neat though, because I honestly, for me, Ghostbusters, the Ecto car is my most favorite movie car of all time, and probably one of my most favorite cars in general. That ambulance hearse they use for the movie, just a stock one by itself, is one of my most favorite cars of all time. And I know, without a doubt in my heart, if I were to ever get one, which they're so rare, I most likely will never get one, I would turn it into the Ghostbusters car because it's just so iconic. And then you turn on the siren and the lights, and then people are going to go crazy. And that's what I want. I want the crazy factor. I want them to be like, there's a Ghostbuster, you know. um so yeah, just like how you did your car with the Jurassic Park, I would literally turn my 59 Cadillac wagon into a Ghostbusters car. That's the only way I see it. I don't see it stock. I don't see it as an ambulance or a hearse. I see it as a Ghostbusters car.
Believe me, my to this day, my lifelong goal is to get a 1993 Jeep and make a screen accurate Jurassic Park Jeep. But the problem here in the problem here in the South is, I'm going to go stereotypical Alabama here on everyone for a minute. The rednecks get a hold of them and they trash them. They
Right.
trash them.
Would they do like mudding because it's a four-wheel drive option vehicle, like
Oh, yeah,
mudding and off-roading and stuff, like
yeah,
redneck off-roading, so not
yeah.
like the real mountain-esque off-roaders?
What's bad is I've got a buddy of mine. He's in the Air Force here, and he actually has one. He has a Jurassic Park Jeep, and
Oh wow.
he and I went about 4 or 5 months ago. He said, "Hey, Rad, I'm on the city buy sell trade group. I found a Jeep, 3 grand. Let's go look at it." Because the Jurassic Park Jeep, you can tell it's going to be the right era because it's got the square headlights.
Yeah, right,
'Cause
right.
I believe it was after '95 they stopped making them with the square headlights. So those are actually pretty hard to find. Especially the ones that are sand beige. Those are super hard to find. But we went out middle of Elmore County, right outside Montgomery, and there's the Jeep, and from the road it's almost glowing, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh my God, I have $3,000 I can spend right now. I'm so close." And the closer we got, the more reality was setting in. Was, oh my God, this thing is missing its top. It's been sitting under trees for the past 5 years,
Oh, so it's
and
a
there's
part of the tree practically.
and there's a rust hole in the floorboard the size of my head, and the expectation just went from here and just started ever slightly going down more.
Right.
And we never even spoke to the guy. We just left, but one of these days, you're going to get your Ecto one, and I'm going to get my Jurassic Park. And my buddy going to have one of every
Well,
telephone vehicle ever made.
yeah, I've got the Ecto, just in miniature size. I don't have the full size. Um, that's crazy, man. I really hope that you do get it. I mean, you're still young enough. They're still out there. Hopefully, maybe you find something on the the West Coast where it's not rotten to death and people haven't just drove it into the ground. Because
I'm
they got to be out there.
I'm just waiting for my buddy Nathan to get transferred somewhere out of the country, and he has to say, "Rad, I'm giving you my Jeep, take care of it. I'm leaving it to you,
Right.
you know,
That would
or
be cool.
I'm
I
praying
mean, he knows how much you like it, so you never know.
praying that the Air Force gods sent him to like Alaska or Canada or somewhere cold where they don't do Jeeps.
Right, right.
But
Yeah, that's funny.
but I mean, back with the, even in the Jurassic Park movies, they had the in the second one they had a lot of the militaristic vehicles, and they even had Humvees in that one. And I think that's going to be one of my next builds because I'm sitting on a couple of the older Roko kits that the detail is just not 100% there because these are probably late 80s, early 90s kits. So I think I'm going to do a Jurassic Park build pretty soon. Maybe one of the dinosaur tracker vehicles or in one of the engine hunter trucks or something like that. Because I've been building, honestly, with all the COVID stuff going on, I've been building cast resin German kits for the past 2 months, and I need to change a pace because I'm going
Yeah,
crazy. I'm starting to read,
right.
and I've never taken German in my life. So
That's that is so funny you say that because I was literally just talking to uh Tom. Man, I talked to so many people. Thomas Kelly?
it's either Thomas Kelly or Tom Hart, because I know Tom
No,
Hart.
not Tom Hart. Uh, the youngest Kelly, the one that does the cranes.
Robert.
And when you watch this, Kelly, sorry, I forgot your name already, but
Yeah,
that's just my brain for me. The guy that the father and son that does the cranes,
yeah,
he
yeah.
told me
It's
that
Robert.
yeah, that a lot of their cranes are all in German, and he's slowly learning it, I believe he said, because he's trying to understand the instructions that are in German as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of lazy because I've got all my a lot of the military modelers I know are from Germany, but they're American, and a lot of them know German because they've been stationed over there so long. They
Right.
and I'll usually just text them a picture of the directions. I was like, translate this for me. Please, I don't know what I'm doing. But a great thing is the German military market is unbelievable with the amount of kits that they're coming out with. The military stuff we used to be kind of pushed back to the 90s and World War II stuff because, like you've mentioned before, that's what the generation before us modeled. You know,
Mhm.
we're seeing more and more modern stuff come out, like the JLTV is the newest of the new that our ground forces have until we want to waste money on another expensive MRAP. But one of the best kits I think I've built to date would be the Killdozer.
Oh,
And
yeah,
um,
that's neat.
this was it's an all resin kit by Arsenal M, and it is not a cheap kit. He just re-released these, and they're running around 64 euro, which I believe to USD is in the network is 70 something dollars.
It's about
And
right.
people call me crazy for saying, "Oh my God, you spent that much money on that?" Well, if if they're resin, we're not going to get that many runs out of them, and once they're gone, they're gone. And
Right.
the greatest example of that, I would have to say, would be Trident. They used to do a lot more military stuff and even civilian stuff that we've never even seen here stateside. One of those would be
Really?
one of them would be the M88a2 Hercules, and that's the big for you or your viewers, if you Google it, these things are a beast. It's basically a tow truck for the M1 Abrams tank and our major tracked vehicles. The only company that has ever produced it was Trident, and I managed to get my hands on 3 of these kits. And I get them, and my expectations, just like the Jeep, are like way up here. And I get them, and I should have taken Paul Knowles' warning on these kits. I really should have. I will never doubt that man again because it was one of the worst kits I've ever built. it was completely out of scale because
Wow.
this was I would say a pre-CAD drawing model. So everything about it was out of scale. If you're honestly to your viewers, if you see this kit, run, go to shape, scratch build it. It's so much easier. You know,
It's funny that you bring up Shapeway because I have like two websites of Shapeway always pulled up on my phone so I can just order what I need real quick. But one of them is the passenger vehicle guy, Mad About Cars, that I get a lot of my cars from. All my Ghostbusters cars are from him. And then another one is just the generic 187 scale on Shapeway. And when you just pull up 187 scale, I don't know if you've ever done that, or for all the viewers out there, you get a lot of military stuff. It seems like that's the majority of what is just in the beginning of the funnel of putting just that category of 187 in the Shapeway.
yeah,
And I don't even know what any of that stuff is, but there's so much of it.
I've noticed the same thing over the years. There's a guy, we have a military group. It's 187 USA Modern Military, and there's a gentleman on there named John Velope, and I cannot speak more highly of this man and the work he does. He used to go through Shapeways, and he ended up getting I believe he made enough money off Shapeways to buy his own 3D printer. And the
Oh,
stuff
wow.
doing is just unbelievably detailed. Because the issue I've had with Shapeways, and I don't know if you've had the same issue, because it seems that with your details on like the Ecto-1 and some of the passenger vehicles, is you want things like the door seams, the door handles. You want a detailed interior.
Right.
Detail in your tires and your axles and underframe. Well, the issue I come across is a lot of military stuff is riveted. Some of it's welded, but there is a ton of detail. Tons of side vents, armor side plating. I could go on for hours and hours on that. But the issue I come across with Shapeways is the print lines. And the quality with Shapeways is always kind of hit or miss for me,
Right.
even with their scaling, because what you and I might see as 187, someone from Germany, China, Australia might see it a little bit differently. And it might be listed as 187, but it's going to print out smaller or larger than what we need.
Yeah, that's definitely the problem. And then like you also said, the detail, because they're not using resin 3D printers. They're using whatever that spool. I have one and I don't even still know what it's called. Like the spool wire printer. They just have the finest detailed versions of that version. And that's not going to give you the rivets on the side of a car because it's too small of a detail to be able to make, I guess.
No,
And it,
I was able to solve some issues. There's a model train company out there called Archer decals or Archer rivets, and they make
yeah,
rivet.
yeah, yeah,
And don't get
right.
awesome product. But when you and I sit there and we spend 40, 50, $80 on a model from Shapeways, I don't want to have to put another $100 worth of work into it to make it look halfway decent.
You're exactly right. And I think once they step up to their next level, which would be the resin printer, it'll be able to offer that. But then they're just going to charge more for the model as well. And I think we all just need to get our own resin printer. And I think the programming for it needs to be so simple where you can just click the picture you want, drag it to the printer picture and say print, and it'll print it without no hesitation and no figuring out of measurements of any kind.
And when it's done, the little car drives out it drives out to its paint booth, the mini paint booth idea, and gets painted, and then it goes right on your
Yeah,
shelf.
I can tell you listened to the last podcast.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, that. I mean,
I'm
honestly, I think if it could be like Mattel does their Hot Wheels and they paint the casting, the body of the car, all at the same time. And the way I've never actually watched it. They have like a top secret method on it, but it's painted all at the same time. So say you have like 100 flames going down the car, but you have like a blue bottom paint job to it. It gets painted blue and then painted with the flames like that. And you don't have no runs, no drips, no nothing. That is what I want hooked up to the 3D printer.
see the one for me, and I've got a lot of guys on the 187 scale groups that they go, oh my God, you've got a lot more patience than I do, is the camouflage. You know, here's the perfect example. I got a buddy of mine who's an old Southern Railway engineer here in the South, and he models Southern back in the 70s, early 80s, and he said, hey, Rad, I want some military equipment. What's in my era? And I had to go through my U.S. Army handbook that I got from a buddy of mine at Anniston, and I had to look at the era of vehicles. And I managed to come up with this. They're a pair of, these are a pair of oh wow, I think these are M109A3 shop trucks. They're on M35 chassis. And one of them is in the Murdoch desert paint scheme, and one of them is in the Woodland Nato 3-color paint scheme, which we still use this one, but this paint scheme's out the window. But you know, like one of these trucks usually takes me about 2 hours to paint because you can use an airbrush for a lot of the stuff, and a lot of the German guys, that's what they recommend. But unfortunately, I don't have an airbrush. All of my stuff is painted with Tamiya spray paint.
Yeah,
And
I'm the same way.
and I have a lot of guys that they come to me and say, hey man, what airbrush are you using? I'm using a Tamiya rattle can. No, really, what airbrush are you using?
Right.
Tamiya rattle can. Swear, hand on a Bible, that's what I'm using. And it takes me having to sit there over Facebook video and showing them me spray painting a tank.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean, for the camouflage, do you also use like a mask to allow that first coat of paint to be on there, and then you mask out the camouflage part and then throw the second coat of paint on there and then just peel off that other piece? Is that how you do the camouflage?
nope, it's all freehanded.
Oh
Every
my gosh.
every inch of that truck, tank, trailer, my insanity's gone out the window, or my sanity's gone. It is all hand painted, and I owe that all to um oh, that crashed. Um, this book right here. It is literally the U.S. Army handbook on how to paint
Oh wow.
any vehicle from basically the 1980s to present day. And it's
That's
all,
crazy.
this is the Woodland NATO 3-color paint book. And I believe the government has declassified it. I really hope so because I'm not in the military. But you can get those. You can go to surplus stores and you can order these things. I'm pretty sure there's a website you can just go get it for free if you really wanted it. And same for the tie downs. You know, a lot of the for my personal military train, I don't know if it picks up on camera, but all of my
You
tanks
can
are
kind of see it.
yeah. Well, you know, if you hold the manual, I've got the U.S. Army manual, and if you're holding the manual up to that tie down, you're oh my God, that's correct. Oh wow, oh well, that's really correct. And it's because that's fine detail to me. And you know, when I first got into the military stuff, I thought that every vehicle was different when it came to the Woodland paint scheme. Because when you're seeing these trains go by at 50 miles an hour, it's kind of hard to notice the smaller details. But when you really start looking at a woodland tank and a woodland tank together, the pattern might be off by like a few millimeters or a centimeter, but it's in the same place it's supposed to be. And that's the same Humvee. And there are some special forces units that they paint their own stuff and it doesn't go off of anything that we have in the handbook. And there have been some vehicles that have been painted. The greatest one I can think of is out of Fort Irwin, California. I think that's where Irwin is. But you have the 11th ACR out there, and that's their sole purpose is to play the bad guy. for training operations. And you can always tell it's an 11th ACR vehicle going by because it's a tan vehicle with this NATO brown striping thrown into it. And I've got a buddy of mine who's actually in the 11th, he's a mechanic for the 11th ACR, and he's sent me pictures of these tanks. And you want the coolest looking paint scheme to put on a tank. That's what we need to go to, because tan looks so boring to me. That's a huge reason why I went to modeling Marine Corps, because the Marines use majority woodland vehicles. And I love green, man. The woodland stuff just looks a whole lot more aggressive and tactical than the tan.
Well, I've got a two-parter for you. It's an inquiry, and then sort of an option we might be able to use. So first, the paint schemes on tanks, military vehicles, or whatever. When you paint them, are you painting them to the exact specs as good as you can get it, or are you just putting the graphics, the paint scheme on it and saying this is what would be on it, not thinking or not, I guess, caring, I don't know, about having it be perfectly in the right spot or looking at the exact right way for the model you're building?
I try to get it as close as humanly possible. You know, if you're airbrushing it versus, hand brushing it with a paintbrush, you're never going to get it exactly to the way you want it. Because
Right.
I hate to say, but unlike, your modeling, you've got like the metallic paint flake paint schemes, you got the hot rod flames. You do have some one-off stuff that is extremely difficult to pull off in any scale.
Right. It's all decals.
Oh, giving away secrets.
I don't mind telling anybody I'm not that good. I can make it look good, but I'm not that good.
I don't know, man. Folks, he's not telling the truth. I've seen his stuff. It's awesome. But when it comes to the tanks, the majority of them are all matching uniform, back to back to back, even with the details. There are a few I've done where I've accidentally put the black on the wrong side of the brown and vice versa.
That's where I was getting at.
Right.
Is
It's
that a big deal?
Not necessarily. I don't, because I belong to a model train club up in Birmingham, and the most recent run-in I had with a veteran was I was sitting there with, for those of you who are also familiar with the model trains, Drayden Blackgrove from Scale Trains was with us. And he and I are standing there, he's running his power, and I've got my military train running, and this man comes up to me and says, "Hey, who's got the Marine Corps train?" And I quickly turned around and I shook his hand. I was like, "Thank you for knowing what branch of the military this train is."
Right.
And he said, "Oh, so it's yours?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, I drove that MK27 that's on there. You nailed it. Thank you so much for doing it right. You got the turret
that's
right,
cool.
paint scheme right. Where can I get one of these?" And I'm waiting on a call from him any day now for him to tell me to build him one. But I mean,
That's awesome.
It's that kind of stuff where I brought the tanks in front of tank veterans and the Humvee in front of just other vets and stuff like that. And all of them have gone, "Man, you did it right. It looks just like my tank, or it looks just like the truck I drove."
Well, here's the second part of that then. Because you build it how you build it, or you paint it the way you paint it. I can't even talk. The second part was I was thinking if it's just a basic pattern that you can put on, like say the color pattern is a certain pattern, like say blue and green or whatever, or blue, green, and gray. I don't know, whatever, just the color pattern. But then the graphic design is just always a certain way. I wondered if William could possibly come up with like an 8x10 sheet where you can just cut out decals and put them on there, and then you wouldn't have to use all that painting skills you have.
Oh man, that would put me out of business.
That's why I was wondering though, like I was wondering if it's so specific to each individual model that a decals that is a universal for that pattern wouldn't work or something.
Well, with the two current color patterns that the U.S. Armed Forces use is desert tan, the khaki tan. We've all seen that, everywhere. And then it's something called NATO woodland, which is NATO green, NATO brown, NATO black. And if you look at NATO black versus regular black we would use on like our, underframe of our vehicles or spray paint, it is actually more of a gray color. And
okay.
It's interesting if you look at pictures of these when they're freshly painted versus the way they weather. The black almost turns purple after a while. It is the oddest thing I've ever seen sun fade wise on vehicles, and it's universal to all the military vehicles for some reason. So a lot of these military divisions, Marine Corps, Army, the combat divisions, they're painting their stuff all green now. And even the tan stuff that's coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan is getting painted just pure green. And I've got a few photos of some tanks that came through out of Fort Stewart, Georgia a few months ago. And all the wheels on the tank were at one time tan, but whatever they ran that tank through on their training exercise ripped all of the green paint off and is showing tan underneath. And there's
so green body with green wheels or tan wheels.
And then you see the side skirts are just all scratched up and it's all tan scratches. And,
wow.
and I started thinking, that tank was tan. Wait, this doesn't make sense because we were painting our stuff tan from being, wait, it took my mind a second to process exactly what I was seeing here. And a lot of the stuff we're bringing back over here is just getting painted for the terrain it's being stationed in. Because if you notice over in Germany and in the UK, we have a lot of bases over there. Same for Japan and Korea. And the majority of our vehicles are woodland or just plain green. And, Tamiya makes, to me, the most accurate military colors out there. If you want to look them up, you just got to look up NATO green, Tamiya, NATO brown. You'll find exactly what you need. And the one thing
they typically have a whole section of military paint, all in that same like bundle of paints they put together.
Oh yeah, and it's awesome getting a chance to go in there and find exactly what you need. But when it comes to the desert tan, I'm using Tamiya. I think it's a desert yellow, which is actually just a shade too lighter than the prototype. But once you do a bunch of matte coating to it, it darkens it up some. But
I've got a little hint for you, since you are a big Tamiya fan. You're not going to find this useful in any way, but I'm going to drop this knowledge on you. If you take Tamiya clear orange or clear yellow and you put that over chrome, it makes gold. It's
really?
the only product that makes actual gold looking paint. But it has to be over like gold plated plastic pieces. So say you have like a Trident mirror, you take that gold Tamiya yellow or orange and put it on that mirror, it'll be a gold mirror afterwards.
Well, we know that.
Not that you need to know that, but
we know that Sam is making everything gold in his collection.
It's funny though, because I did a trade years ago, and I ended up getting a pedestrian version of a 4-door Hummer that looked like it had a soft top that cut off right behind the second set of doors.
Yeah, those.
And I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that. I wanted to make it an off-road sort of tank truck with tracks for wheels. And I was going to put a lift kit on it and everything and put a custom paint job. And somebody, I posted it on the 187 scale group, and somebody wanted it much more than I did. So I ended up I think selling it or trading it to that person. I don't know if he ever built it or not, but I was going to ruin it, and I think they were going to make it actually look good.
The one that I recently found, doing the armored D9R bulldozer, I wanted to do something that I wouldn't necessarily put on my military train, but I wanted to do a combat ready model, something I could throw on a diorama, because also dropping a little hint here, I'm working on my first Route 87 diorama, and
Oh, nice.
it is Iraq 2003 to 2005, and it's going to be on the Iraqi National Highway, which was the MSR, but it's going to be a checkpoint diorama, and it's going to be a little out there. But
That's cool, though. I mean, no one's ever done that in this scale that I've seen. I've done a lot of research when I was doing my Route 187 module. So everything that I've ever seen, no one's ever done that yet.
well,
So that'll be neat.
the one thing I want to do is, because all the vehicles on my model train are not weathered. They're detailed, but I don't weather them because in certain situations, if they're sending the vehicles overseas, they clean them super hard. And
Yeah,
I wanted the
I
vehicles
know that.
I want the vehicles to look like they are going to get sent to the next deployment somewhere, the next combat zone.
Yeah, that's
Well,
cool.
the D9 that I just did, I sat there and I was going to paint it NATO green, and I sat here going like, wait, then I've got to thin the green with some white, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to fade this sucker. I'm lazy and I'm unmotivated. I really don't want to do this. I'm going to shelf this model for the next few months. And I went to the hobby shop recently, first time since all this coronavirus started, and I sat there and I saw a light shade of military green, and I picked it up and it said USAF green Mia, and I said, I wonder if this will work. Worst comes to worst is I just repaint the model, and sure enough, once I painted it and matte coated it and weathered it, I don't need to fade the model anymore because now I found a green that looks like a faded NATO green, and I love it.
Oh, that's cool.
And
That, that's the great thing about being a modeler like you, like me, is we're always looking for the latest and newest and different stuff that we already don't know about, and we find it by mistake because you didn't know that was out there until you saw it. And I mean, unless somebody were to tell you, which it didn't sound like they did considering how you told that story. So you just found it on accident, and it works out perfect for you.
well, I tell you that the craziest one, it was the most recent model I finished this past week, being on total lockdown from life, would be this M113A3. I just finished.
That's neat.
This is actually a version 1 Roko model. When side story on this one, for those of you who are familiar with the Roko mini tanks line, it has gotten passed along to so many model manufacturers over the past 20 plus years. It's not even funny. It's like the redheaded stepchild. At one time, Model Power had the Roko mini tanks line, which every now and again on eBay you'll see Roko stuff in Model Power packaging. And what's odd is then Roko got the line back, and then they sold it to Herpa. And we've all bought from Protomax Herpa before. And then now Herpa sold it back to Roko, and now Roko has sold the line totally to Arsenal M. I don't think the gentleman's name is Thomas, and I don't think Thomas is ever going to get rid of the Roko line because they had really screwed the pooch on quality control during their last.
Oh, wow.
Myself and a veteran buddy of mine went crazy ordering Humvees and Abrams kits, and then he went crazy ordering the big 8x8 Hemmets. And if I had $1 for every part I am missing from these kits, I would be rich. And when
That's crazy.
And when you emailed Roko, they said, "Sorry, we're all out. Good luck finding them." And
geez.
their quality control went out the window. But back to the M113. What was crazy was I sent this. I posted the picture of this to the 187 scale group, and it had pretty good reactions. I really like the way this model turned out. But I sent the picture of this to my buddy in the 11th ACR, and he said, "Man, you nailed the weathering, you nailed the IFF plates, you nailed the bags, but hey, the turret shield is wrong. You need to fix that." And I tell you, the biggest critics to military modelers is the veteran community.
Oh
Those guys,
yeah, I mean they were using it in real life,
those guys,
so they would know.
it is insane. So now I'm on the hunt for the correct turret shield. So if anyone in this podcast, friends, knows where I can find an M113 turret shield, send it to me. But it's kind of cool too, because prototype wise, yeah, you can Google this stuff all you want, but you're going to get a lot of odd calls if you start calling up your local armory, or you show up at a National Guard fence line and you start taking pictures. They're really going to be angry with you on that one. So if anyone wants to get into this, the best thing I can tell you is go buy some books. There's some great publications available at Mark Twain Hobbies up in St. Louis. Kim Patterson was actually the one who showed me those when I was over at his house. He had a book on the Stryker LAVs and the MTVR trucks. And I bought both of those books recently, and those are amazing publications. And then the other thing too is go on Facebook and look up some of these military vehicle buy-sell trade groups, or go look up Midwest Military Equipment, and these guys will give you the paint diagrams, and they'll go out in their backyards and take pictures of their own trucks. There's a guy up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, trying to sell a Russian tank the other day. Say, Sam, you want to go buy a tank?
Hmm.
If you have 100,
No.
you have 75K, let's do this.
Maybe I'll put a No Ghost logo on the door, paint it all white.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy because a lot of these military surplus trucks, it's insane if you know what the government spends on this stuff, and then what they sell it for is almost an insult. Because there's a truck for sale right up the street from me. It's an M923A2, totally rebuilt, and the one guy wants $5,000 for it. And that truck was probably 60 grand when the military bought it.
That's crazy.
And those
But
are fun
you gotta really want that truck though. I would think with the military in general, like their stuff is made so tough and so rugged that you would have to really be in love with it to want to have it, I would think. I mean,
I totally agree with you, and this goes back to my to the days when I used to do milsim. Ever since I was a little kid, elementary school, junior high, I wanted a Hummer. I thought the H1 Hummer and the Humvee was the coolest truck ever. Yeah.
Well, back then it was.
Yeah, next to Jurassic Park. And I remember it was Operation Dragon Rogue in Dawsonville, Georgia. One of my coworkers and I went to this milsim op. We were a scout recon sniper team, and we show up, and this is a 48-hour operation. So you get there, you sign in, you're in your uniform, you're in your gear, and you're out the door for 48 hours. You don't come back to your truck. And
Jeez.
remember, they put us in the back of a Humvee, and I'm thinking it's going to be the greatest ride ever. It's going to be awesome. But the middle of Georgia, summertime, these things have no air conditioning. The windows didn't roll down. It had heat. It had a heater. And a tiny little fan in it.
There's the heat coming off the engine.
It feels, I guess the greatest way I could kind of describe it when we hit the highway was it feels like you're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere in your swim trunks.
Oh my gosh.
It's the most unbearable thing. I was begging to trade places with the guy up in the turret so I could at least stick my head up and just get a face full of wind.
Yeah.
And even then, you just feel the heat coming off the engine, and it's loud, it's cramped. These trucks are abnormally wide. But when you're, I could stick my arm out to the side and not touch the guy next to me. But when you're sitting in there with a gun and a Kevlar vest and a helmet, you're literally sitting like this.
Right, because they're individual cockpits. on like all four seats.
Pretty much. And it's but off-roading in them is fun. And the only thing worse than that I've ever ridden in was a World War II Jeep. There is no suspension in those.
Oh no, they didn't need them. They just needed them to go back and forth, get to A to B. That was it.
Pretty much. The coolest one was my very first Milsima. They put me in the back of an M35, and that's a 6x6 cargo truck.
Oh wow.
And there were 27 of us crammed in the back of this truck. And I'm in the driver's seat, and the first time I'd ever driven one of these things in my entire life. And I got the owner of the truck sitting right next to me. And we were going to be driving to the forward operating base. And we get in the truck, and I'm just driving along, big truck, and he put a power steering pump, but the truck didn't come with power steering.
Oh my gosh.
A lot easier to turn than it was beforehand. But I remember I go to back up, and I do a 3-point turn. I'm feeling confident, my 21-year-old self feeling very confident back then that I don't, man, this could be great. And they say you need hearing protection in these trucks, and I found out why. Because I'm hearing 20 plus guys in the back of this truck, terrified. They are terrifiedly screaming at me, banging on the cab, and telling me to stop because I'm hitting trees, and I'm just mowing trees down in reverse. I'm not feeling anything. And then finally Doug said, "Hey, Brad, we've been backing up for a while. I think you should stop." And I stop, and I just hear I just see everyone piling out on every end of the truck, breaking the canvas. One guy took his knife and just ripped the canvas in two.
Oh geez.
And they're going like, "You just wrecked Doug's truck. He's gonna kill you." And I got out and I'm like, "Oh God, he's gonna kill me." There wasn't a scratch on the truck. So they're built tough. They are built tough because I've personally taken out trees in these things, and I haven't even been able to put a dent in them.
So here's a question, not model related, but what's up with the speed limit? Why can't you ever drive the actual speed limit when you're driving on pedestrian roads when you're in the military?
I never found that out because I think the Humvee has a max speed of, I think, 55, 56 miles an hour.
That's crazy because you can see them on the freeway. I mean, you don't see very many of them on the freeway, but you have, at least once in your lifetime probably seen one on the freeway doing normal speeds, I think. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, the cargo trucks, like the M932s and M933s, well, M939s, I've seen them do highway speeds because those are basically just Caterpillar engines, because these trucks were all made by AM General and Chevy and they've contracted, Chrysler has built a lot of them. Oshkosh builds the majority of our trucks now. Any of these, the newer MRAPs, the JLTVs, the M-ATVs, those are all made by Oshkosh. The Hemet 8x8 trucks are all made by Oshkosh. Same for the U.S. Marine Corps MK series truck. And that's a very unique truck because only the Navy uses those in our arsenal. The Marines have to be very different in what they do for some reason. For example, you can always tell what's a U.S. Marine Corps Humvee because of the side exhaust pipe that comes off the side. It's called a high water fording kit, and that's for when they drive them off the landing craft, at the beachhead.
It can still drive.
Right. Or they can go through rivers and lakes. It's insane what these things can do. I don't recommend doing that if you have a Humvee, I don't recommend doing it because you're going to get it stuck. But
yeah, because they don't have that exhaust pipe going up.
No, but my buddy John, he was the tanker. He did a tour in Iraq and a couple in Afghanistan, Korea. He had told me this old story, and the odds of him getting in trouble for this now is like so out there because this was back in like the early 2000s. He was in Korea, it was his last deployment, and they got really, really bored. So they raced an Abrams tank versus an MRAP. And that Abrams tank just went right off the line. It just booked it. The Abrams the Abrams tanks are incredibly fast. It's scary how fast some of our tracked vehicles are versus our wheeled vehicles.
Jay Leno has a show on some channel called Jay Leno's Garage. I think it's CNBC or something like that. And he did an episode where he went out to Camp Pendleton, I think, and he got into a tank, like their fastest tank, whatever they had out on their base. And that thing was just ripping it.
Mm-hmm.
It was fast. And you don't think, looking at a tank, that something that probably weighs tons could go that quick. But those things are fast as heck. At least that one was.
I think the Abrams are somewhere in the network of, I think, 24, 25 tons. It's insane. They're so heavy. One thing, okay, this is, to take it off the vehicles for a second, this is a Department of Defense flat car. The DoD actually has these. This is riding on something called a Buckeye truck, which is a three-axle truck.
Mm-hmm.
These green cars right here were specifically made to hold the Abrams weight.
Oh, wow.
And we have two variants in our arsenal. We have the Buckeye truck green cars, and then we have the 90-ton red cars, which ride on a smaller variant truck but can only hold one Abrams tank. And it's because the tanks are so heavy, you can't put them on traditional rail cars. So that's another flaw to the military market that I hope gets rectified soon. Is to get off the vehicle subject, there was a company called Union Terminal Imports. It's a brass company that recently went under, and they have been the only ones to ever make these cars in HO scale, the Buckeye truck cars. I'm lucky enough to own two of these cars in brass. Don't want to say how much I paid for them. That's another story. But there's a need for that out in the world, and there are some companies, Spring Mills Depot, and if Paul Knowles is watching this, I know he's grinding his teeth right now about Spring Mills Depot, along with a lot of other military modelers, because we've been waiting, pushing 10 years for their car to come out, and they won't answer our emails anymore. So. Don't get me wrong, but the last, I think it was the Cocoa Beach RPM down in Florida, they brought out the pre-production samples after 10 plus years of development, but now they've just kind of ghosted everyone on responses on emails, which it may be because of the pandemic. None of us, we can only really speculate what's going on. But
right.
I'd love to see a company, maybe Walthers or Athearn, come out there and do something. I'm really surprised no one who's done the Back to the Future steam engine. That really surprises me, because that engine is still running, if I'm not mistaken. And
so it's not, they say it's not to scale. I guess the engine is bigger than HO, but it's on an HO configurement for their wheels, but they do make that engine. Did you not see my post on me making that engine?
Oh no, I do. I honestly haven't yet, but the other one that got me was the what was the one? It had the guy from Willy Wonka and the it was, man, why can't I think of his name? He was on the passenger train, and crazy stuff started happening on the passenger train.
Gene Wilder from Willy Wonka?
Yeah. It was, yeah, he was on a passenger train, and it was a redecal Canadian Pacific train set. And it was the AM road was on the side of the train. It was I'm going to probably remember this in the middle of the night and text you and go, that's the name of the movie. But
I don't know that movie.
It's the same with movie cars. I mean, transportation in general in Hollywood has just been put on the back burner besides Fast and the Furious, and I hate those movies.
They have. Yeah, I like the first one, but I hate the rest of them.
I like Tokyo Drift. I like that because
I couldn't stand that one. The main actor, that kid, can't act to save his life. His stupid accent, his dumb acting. I think ruined the whole movie for me. And he's in the very first scene of the movie.
You know, somewhere we are triggering a bunch of HO skill modelers, and I'm loving it right now.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So here, check this out. Hopefully you can see it. I'll turn this camera around to mine. That's the Back to the Future train.
oh heck yeah.
Minus this stupid Ghostbusters car I made. But yeah. And then in front, well, nope. I had the DeLorean in front, but yeah, that's the Back to the Future train there.
That's what I'm talking about. See, now you need Doc with the hoverboard, you know, hanging on the side of
That's
it.
so funny because I actually have Marty with a hoverboard, but where is he at? Where did I put him? He was on this layout somewhere. He's gone. I don't know. He was up there. He had the hoverboard because I had right above. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me turn this camera around again. On this module, I had Marty on the hoverboard, and right up here, I had the DeLorean hovering at the RPM meet, and then what held the DeLorean up was like a piece of thin steel wire, and I made that into I don't even know what you call it. Like it's some kind of string that has like that you see at car dealerships that they're advertising like a sale or something. And he was
Yeah.
hanging off of that, and he was on the hoverboard right at this point, but I don't know where Marty went. Oh well, maybe he died.
Oh my God.
Right. I don't know where he went, so oh
So,
well.
so I got to ask, because you know I've thrown out there what my favorite movie car is. So you've got to be Ghostbusters. What would be?
Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, my favorite. I like the Ghostbusters actual car more than I like the DeLorean, but I love the DeLorean for the fact that it's a future car. I don't really care for the DeLorean itself. I love the fact that they took that car and made it into a car that can go into the future and into time.
It's the
So I love the
only car.
story of the car.
I think that there was a joke because my news director is a huge car guy, and I think he was saying, "Oh yeah, the DeLorean is the only car that was ever inspired by cocaine-fueled rage."
Yeah,
And
basically.
okay, cool, awesome.
But
I,
the funny thing is, one of GM's, I think the story goes, one of GM's designers, the guy who created the 3-carb intake for the muscle car era for like the mid 60s to mid 70s, you could get an engine that had 3 carburetors in a row. They call it like 3 deuces. That guy is behind some of the designing of the DeLorean. I don't know what that has anything to do with anything, but it's just interesting that GM played a part in creating a cocaine-filled car.
Speaking of cocaine-filled cars, we've got any of the maintenance away guys. It's another, basically division of the 187 scale modeler guys.
That's a lot of them.
Yeah, no, right. Here in Montgomery, we have Kershaw, and that's a household maintenance away name throughout the world. And they actually make the ballast regulators here. So when you see the ballast regulators slinging ballast everywhere, blame Montgomery, Alabama for that because we invented those. Cool. One of the gentlemen, his name is Royce Kershaw, and he, has a warehouse here in Montgomery at an undisclosed location because unfortunately it's on the bad side of town. But he invited some friends of ours to come out, and we go out there, and there are 4 pre-production samples that Kershaw's father had designed in the 60s for the World's Fair. And you want some of the weirdest looking, these cars scream 1960s. And they're the
concept cars.
They're the only ones of their kind.
Right.
And there's
That's usually how concept cars are. They're only built to show off, to advertise what it could be, and then they never get built. So
well,
they're the one of ones.
these are just so out there. There's one he built, and I'm going to bring my childhood back out for cartoons, but it looks like the bus from SpongeBob, I swear, because it looks like the bus that's going to take me to Bikini Bottom. And my buddy John and I are sitting there going like, this is kind of psychedelic right here. I kind of like this because he had so many cars. Same, he had Model A's, Model T's, Dodge Power Wagons, a couple of old 1950s, 1960s COEs, and the
Wow.
whole reason why I was out there was he's restoring a 260 steam locomotive to full operating condition. So it was a good opportunity for me to go.
Oh, awesome.
So for me, it was a good example for me to just climb over a steam engine and train nerd out and get covered in soot, asbestos, and God only knows what else I was climbing through just to get to climb all over this engine. But when it comes to just weird off the wall cars, the weirder the better to me because I think my favorite,
Oh yeah, me too.
like my favorite
I love that weird stuff.
my favorite non-military, non-movie car would have to be the VW Thing. That is the weirdest thing. It's based off the German Jeep from World War II, but
Yeah,
it's so
yeah, it
cool.
is.
Oh, those things are so
Yeah, it's
cool.
definitely weird. And it's so basic too. There's like nothing to that vehicle. So to have it be in mass production and it actually work, that's like it is a thing of who knows what, but it's a weird thing, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and with the because I'll go to car shows and everything, and every now and again, I'm not a huge muscle car guy. I know a lot of trucks, military. You throw that in front of me, and I can probably name it. But every now and again, I see a muscle car, and I'm like, ooh, I like that. And the one muscle car that's kind of near and dear to my heart is the '64 Mustang, because my great granddad had one, and I remember as a little kid coming to my great granddad's house that I'm sitting in his house right now, but he had a red 64 and a half Mustang with a black
Very
leather.
first ones.
Yeah, and he bought the car brand new off the showroom, and it was a one owner car, and when my great grandfather passed, it was left to my grandmother, and we sold it to our cousin in Pensacola, Florida, and he has gone and restored that car from the ground up, factory new.
Oh,
And
good for him.
the fact that the car is still in the family, and all I gotta do is call him, and I can go down there and see the car anytime I want. That is like one of the coolest things to me because that car,
No, it's definitely cool.
I'm
Yeah,
not
not
gonna lie,
just to you, to me too.
I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the car getting put on the flatbed trailer and hauled away, it brought a tear to my eye because I grew up looking at that car, and I grew up, bragging to my friends, well, I got a Mustang sitting in my garage. What do you have?
Right,
And
right.
it was. I think we only took it out once because that car had no power steering, and the brakes didn't really want to work. So it was a screaming metal death trap. But the one
Yeah,
memory I have of being in that car, it was so much fun.
that's awesome. That's so cool that you have memories of a classic car. Like so many, I would say kids from, not even kids, like grown adults from probably 30 and younger don't have those memories because their childhood was in like Honda Civics from the 90s and stuff because their parents didn't have classics. They had modern cars that would, strangely enough, are some of them are classics now in the DMV's eyes, and you're thinking, how is 95 classic? That doesn't even seem right in any way.
The
But in some states, the DMV considers 1995 to be classic.
the one that got me was my news director gave me a challenge last year, and he said, if you can bring me a car that I've never heard of, I'll give you $50. And
Nice.
I sat during the weekend, and I'm thinking, what in the heck? This guy knows everything about cars. Oh man, I want that $50. And I was talking to my mechanic friend of mine. I was like, well, man, you need to tell him about the Subaru Brat. And I was like, what's a Subaru Brat? And he's like, imagine an El Camino and a redneck truck had a baby, and that's what you're going to
Yeah.
get. It's a throwaway car. And it had a seat
Right.
in the bed facing reverse. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it
That's
had like
fair. Yeah. I've
And
never seen it in person, but I know exactly what that is.
yeah, and apparently it was a throwaway car. And I came in and I just walked into the newsroom and I yelled, Glenn, Subaru Brat. And he said, I'm going to the bank now. He'd
Nice.
never seen them. There's so many weird cars, like the concept cars here in Montgomery. I hate to say it, but I'm really hoping, you know, when Royce passes, because he's in his 80s, when he passes, I hope those cars go to a museum and not get crushed because they're
Well,
so off the wall cool.
yeah, I'll tell you what, man. If you know that guy or you know people that know that guy, and then you can get in touch with a museum that's somewhat local. That way you don't have to do very much traveling to talk to the museum. And then maybe if you go back over there and you take pictures of these cars, you can probably talk to them into putting them in the museum, or they know, because museums are all connected. They all know each other. They all trade cars back and forth throughout several years and stuff. And they're all connected. So if that museum can't hold them or whatever and don't see the importance, maybe another museum will.
Well,
So
the coolest part is I know the guys I went to with the RPM last year are all with the Ellen Historical Society. And Royce, on top of the crazy amount of rare cars he has from across the world sitting in this warehouse, he's got the oldest recorded L&N passenger car in existence. It's a wooden car. Um, and I think they're actually trying to buy the car from him. And that's going to be, I've climbed all over that thing. It's in bad shape. It's going to take a miracle to get that thing out of the warehouse because it's riding
wow.
on something called composite trucks. And that's, typical railroad trucks, they're steel.
Yeah, yeah.
Composite are plywood and steel combined. So I know a couple of feds that have already told me there's no way this thing's ever going to travel the nation rail system ever again. But it's the cars in the midst of being saved, which that's what matters in the end. Because even with some of the movie cars that you and I grew up looking at, the RV in the Lost World, that Fleetwood RV with the trailer, really cool looking. I could live in that thing. It's so cool. Um,
Right.
the Jurassic Park motor pool found one. There were, I think there were two left in existence. One of them is sitting at Universal Studios in Hollywood on the back lot, and the other one they found outside, I believe, Anaheim, California, in the desert on a ranch. And they did a full video series on YouTube on this Frenchman who collects movie cars bought the RV, and it was crazy watching the video because I know all these guys, and what was crazy was watching them trying to get from Anaheim, saying, yeah, it's going to be a 30-minute trip, and a 30-minute trip turned into an 8-hour trip because
Yeah.
the thing hadn't run since the 90s, and they restored
Wow.
this thing in 2015. So they were throwing radiator fluid and coolant every 5 minutes. And
That's crazy.
to see, what Hollywood does to regular vehicles to get them to work right. Because even with the war movies, like you mentioned, one of the most famous ones that I could think of was Red Dawn, the first one, the good one with Patrick Swayze. If any of you guys have ever seen that movie, a lot of y'all who grew up in the Cold War era, and the Russians are coming, head for the hills. You'll look at that movie and you're thinking, wait, they filmed this during the Cold War. How do they have a Russian? How is there a Russian Hind helicopter chasing Patrick Swayze through the desert? Why is there a Russian T-55 going down the street? And what was kind of cool about the whole movie, and it's an old production story, is they had hired this car company out in Colorado that specialized in military surplus to build Russian vehicles and essentially modify American armor, trucks, jeeps, and helicopters to look like Russian. And apparently, these guys did such a good job during filming and production. The CIA and the FBI came knocking on their door because there was a sheriff's department airplane that flew overhead and just saw a fleet of Russian aircraft sitting in this field, and
Oh
Russian,
wow.
and they thought the Russians had invaded. And they were going,
Right.
how did you get these and where did they come from? And to this day, I think they're still sitting out there at this company. The company apparently still makes movie vehicles, and all the Russian Hind and tanks are all sitting out there, which, I mean, nowadays I can go on government liquidations and I can go buy a Russian tank myself because they sell them here stateside. I can go to South Alabama, an hour south of me, and I can go buy a Russian helicopter if I want to from the military base.
Wow.
We have them, and we're getting rid of them because the Russians have newer stuff and we don't need the older stuff, so we're selling it. It's
Yeah.
Tom Hart on the 187 scale group. I'm going to call him out here for a second. He's a huge Russian fan. A little scary how much he knows about the Russian stuff. And he
And
called,
for being so young too.
I know, right? He is obsessed with this car dealership that I think is just like an hour away from his town that has a Russian Jeep up for sale, like a Russian Soviet military Jeep. He has been talking to me about this dang Jeep for 2.5 years, going, man, one of these days I'm gonna buy that Jeep and I'm gonna speak Russian, and he does his little Russian accent, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm gonna buy a Jurassic Park and fly it out to Hawaii and play like I'm getting chased by a T-Rex.
So that's funny that you say that, because I believe he mentioned that Jeep to me at the Amherst show in Massachusetts in January. He was talking to me because we were sitting like right behind each other basically. And he was telling me about that. That was going to be his like dream vehicle for now. And he wants to get it, and he told me a lot of stuff, and I don't remember half of it, but yeah, I remember what he said he wanted to get. So
Oh,
that's interesting.
and he's another one that's helped me out big time with military stuff, because like the Route 87 module I'm working on, there was a picture I found of a blown up ZIL, and a ZIL is a Russian cargo truck. But the Iraqi army got a bunch of them when the Russians invaded Iraq back in the 80s. Well, there's a picture of one just blown to hell and back on the side of the MSR. And I sent a picture to Tom, and I was like, Tom, tell me what this is. What did it do? Because it looks like there's an AA gun in the back of this thing, but I can't tell. And he said, oh, I know exactly what that is. And I was like, really? He's like, I've got some junk resin ZILs. Do you want one? And sure enough, he bought me a replica of the blown up ZIL. And I mean, if I had not met Tom, I would have never have known what I was going to look for, because he is the
Right.
Russian. Like, you're the classic Rat Rods, movie car guy, and Paul is the maintenance away guy, and
Yeah.
all the, Brian Danto, I really hope I got his name right, is the snowplow king to me. You know what I mean? Like, all these guys in the 187 group, we all have our little niche on what we like, and when we all get together, we're kind of a force to be reckoned with. I hate to say it.
We really are. And I honestly, I wish there were more shows that were dedicated to just our scale. Like in the 125th, 124 scale model car world, there's model car shows in every state all across our country all throughout the year. Even in the wintertime, there's a car show somewhere. And I know in Southern California, there's at least a model car show once every week to once every 2 weeks within a 200-mile radius all year round, all year. So I wish, because technically we are building model cars, model trucks, model vehicles, it's a model one way or another. I mean, even this full just resin cast car, even though it's just one piece, it's solid resin, it's a model. It's just you're not really building it, but you are detailing the heck out of it to make it look as good as possible. So I wish, because we are in the model world, that there's just more stuff for us in this scale, like shows to meet up at and show our latest stuff at and stuff.
Well, I mean, you mentioned about the model shows. I'm assuming you mean the IPMA, as I believe what they're called.
There's those, and then there's other shows that are held independently by model car clubs or other factions that just do model cars. So the IPMS, they do everything from sci-fi, military, planes, trains, everything. Any model related thing you build is they have a category for it pretty much. But then there are just shows that are just model cars. So from trucks to cars to commercial vehicles, but that's it. They don't have planes, they don't have boats, they don't have trains, they have nothing else, just model cars. And they're all relatively in the same scale.
What's crazy about that, Tom Hart had actually mentioned about going to the IPMS show. And he said, yeah, man, you need to look, see if there's one in Alabama. And sure enough, there's one in Huntsville, just a couple hours north of me. And I found the group on Facebook, and I had actually sent in a picture of the D9. And I was like, well, you know, that's the best weathered item I have. I put the most detail and work into it. Let me see it. Because I've seen some of these guys, their work blows me out of the water. It's insane, some of the stuff these guys do. And
yeah, they're awesome.
I sent a picture of it in, and I got an email like that, and they said, what scale is that? Where did you get that kit? Because that looks unbelievable. And I was like, well, it's 187. And they said, no, really, what scale is it? And I'm like, I just had to take a picture of it in my hand to prove that it was 87. And now they're saying, man, you need to get up to Huntsville during the next show. So now I'm in that mindset of, okay, I'm going to take a Route 87 module up there. I want to represent the one
do that
to the best of my ability, because, you know, the RPM has graciously welcomed us into their ranks. You know, last year was my first year getting a chance to attend, and I attended with both my military train and my military models and just general contracting vehicles. And, you know, all those guys were so welcoming, and it was almost like sensory overload, because, you know, we were all wearing name tags, and someone recognized my name tag from my model and said, hey man, can I point to the side and talk to you about this tank you just did? Or hey, you did that Alabama Power utility truck. But man, what did you use to do that? It's River Point Station, but it's got the extended boom. How did you do that truck? I have no idea how you did it. And it was so awesome, because the train shows here in Alabama, which is the only thing I've ever really been accustomed to, and even the ones over in Atlanta, they've never had a display for your models. You've only seen the close display stuff. And
yeah, correct.
You've never been able to just openly take your work. You've always had to show a picture on your smartphone or a hard copy, which to me never does justice to seeing it in person. You
100%
know,
correct.
Because I can take a picture of my model outside, which I mean, I prefer taking outdoor photos because of the natural light. I'm going to channel my inner Kim Patterson on that one. But
right.
You know, taking a picture of it outside versus my buddies coming over and seeing them in person, they're seeing other details the picture doesn't pick up. And that's something we all achieve, but we don't get that goal. And, you know, I think that as a group, the 187 scale group should come to the IPMS and say, okay, we would like to come to 4 of your shows cross country a year. What can you help?
I was just talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody. And I was saying that the West Coast doesn't have anything for a meet for our group at all. We have the Midwest, which is St. Louis, and we have Amherst, which is Massachusetts. And then I know Bob posted earlier this year, right after Amherst, that they were invited to a RPM meet in Texas somewhere. And that was the first year they were going to be displayed in Texas. And it's just so crazy to me that we haven't been displaying in other shows so much longer. And it's just now starting to be noticed, I guess.
Well, I hate to say it. I mean, when you look at, nationwide on our, with our group, is here in Alabama, unfortunately, we're stuck in something I call the Hot Wheel effect. And that is, I can go to master model railroaders, these guys that are NMRA certified, they're some of the best, and they've got Hot Wheel cars on their layouts.
Right. That
And
drives me crazy.
and don't get me wrong, like there's some stuff I've gone to Walmart and I've bought HO scale vehicles before, back when Walmart used to sell great stuff like
The
that.
good old days.
You go in there with your $5 and you walk off with like 6 vehicles. Those
Yeah.
and the same for like when I did in scale, I could go and buy 1/144th scale stuff out of there, and it could pass for in scale. But what's crazy is here in Alabama, there are no dealers for 187 scale vehicles. There are no at the model train shows. You might see maybe some old Athearn Kenworth kits show up every now and again, or you might have some guys that have some River Point station trucks for sale, but that's about it. And I mean, especially with the military stuff, I have to sit on my hands and knees and beg model train companies like Walthers or Reynolds or anyone to order from Germany because they're so paranoid about ordering.
Right, because if they order it and nobody buys it, then they're out that money.
Right, and I understand like the Roko stuff has been sitting on the shelves now for 20 plus years, but
right,
that was Roko. I mean, there's still a huge demand for that stuff, and yeah, I know AA Hobbies. I know Nelson is sitting on a bunch of Roko stuff right now, so Nelson might be getting a call from me here really soon. But it's like the Abrams tanks that I have. Before Roko sold to Arsenal M, I could go and buy an Abrams tank kit for $15.95. The last Abrams kit I saw on eBay sold for $67.
Jeez.
And it's just the kit, because the demand is so high for this stuff for some reason. It's the military modeling in general has had a huge resurgence over the years because the veterans and their families are building what their family drove.
Right.
And I mean, and I've got veteran friends who have called me up and said, "Hey, listen, man, I just bought this Humvee kit and this accessory packet. Can you make my Humvee? I've got pictures of me with it in Iraq." And sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't, because it's like with the tanks, 99% of the tanks in the U.S. Army are named. If you notice on the main gun barrel in white lettering or black lettering, it's going to have a name. And some of the names, for example, one I've recently photographed, there was one named Battlestar Galactica, Applebee,
Oh, that's neat.
Hot Potato, Bloodbath, War Pig, I'm Your Daddy, And recently I know someone named there's a Baby Yoda, and another one named.
Oh, geez.
I don't know if it's still around, but someone had named their tank COVID-19.
Oh.
which I think I think that's hilarious personally. But
it's funny because once it takes care of what it needs to, it'll be like you had it and you died from it.
But I mean, like that's some of the stuff that's a little bit harder to do in 187 because unfortunately getting decals that incredibly small that are legible. It's
right, because the gun barrel on a 187 scale tank is not very big. It's not thick and wide enough to put lettering on.
No, it really isn't. I mean, that's my pinky finger versus the tank. I mean, that's that's an insanely small part.
And then if you could get the decal, you probably lose it once you peeled it off of the backing paper. It'll probably just disappear in your hand and you can't see it no more.
Probably. And I mean, like that's the thing, because you had mentioned the doing the woodland print in decal form, and Roko had actually attempted to do that years ago. A big flaw to the Roko mini tanks line was they mold their vehicles in the military colors. So the green trucks are molded in green, the tan trucks are molded in tan. Well, unfortunately, they're horrifically wrong in the shade.
Oh wow.
I recently did some work for a buddy of mine. I've got 6 of his artillery cannons sitting on my workbench over here. But he wanted, as payment, partial payment, he sent me an Abrams kit because he knew I needed one. And the Abrams was in Woodland. It came like that. It was a special edition from Roko. They're incredibly hard to find. And I was like, well, maybe I can get away with not painting this. Maybe I can be lazy. Let me put it next to one of my Woodland tanks. And it was so incredibly dark compared to the lighter color that the NATO is supposed to be. I just had to strip it and totally repaint it. And I'm sitting here going like, Ed probably paid a lot of money for the special edition model that I just had to strip and repaint.
Right.
Pretty sure the collectors guys are probably rolling over in their grave right now. You know, because
Wow.
That's just the big issue with it. But in the end, I enjoy being able to say that nothing that I have is stock. Everything that I have is modified, decal painted, kit bashed, scrounged together, and
That's awesome.
half of it is either resin or plastic or both. You know, because I built some hybrid kits that are sitting on my train that I'm honestly afraid to move them. They're so fragile. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because I think, like, I put this scale hobby into 3 categories. There's the collector, then there's the modeler that will just build it stock, in other words, build it with whatever parts it came with, and just paint it, set it on their layout or their module, and it's done. And then there's the person that'll make it look real, add all these extra parts on it, make it look like something that didn't look like how you got it. You know, the custom model builder. So 3 categories: custom model builder, modeler, and then collector. That's it. Am I thinking that's the 3 categories that covers most of this scale hobby of vehicles?
Well, what was funny was because there at first I thought that there were not that many guys doing the military trains, and I was so wrong that there's so many of us out there. But I think I'm the only one who's doing mine for the Marine Corps, and I chose the Marine Corps because it's unique, it stands out, and the equipment is just, to me, some of the coolest equipment ever. But what was kind of crazy about it is I've noticed there were, you know, during St. Louis, I went over to Ken Patterson's house and did a What's Neat this week with him. And Ken has a military train. And I
Yeah.
sit here and I emailed Ken. I remember that the headline of the email was, Ken, I want to invade your layout with my military train. Let me come over. And he says, yeah, man, come on, bring it. Let's go. And he thinks I've got like 2 or 3 cars done, when in all reality, 20 cars done. And he lets us down in the basement, me and my buddies, and he goes back upstairs for something, because that man doesn't stay still for 5 seconds.
No.
But
Multitasking like a madman.
oh, you ain't kidding. But what's crazy was he comes back downstairs, and I've got his train in front of my train, and he said, "Oh my God, you've just outdone. Oh, this makes mine look like crap. I don't know why. Oh my, no, I need to take this off. No, keep it on the layout. It's okay. It's okay." And every now and again he'll message me or email me, and he said, "So I still haven't done anything with the military train." And I was like, "Why don't you just send all this to me to build? I can have it all done in like a week." Because
Right.
the D9, from beginning to end, this took me 3 days to build.
See, and that's a talented modeler, because a lot of people take way longer than probably it should be to build a model, and you built yours quick. I mean, I build all mine quick. Like, everything I build is way too fast. And I'll honestly say I build it fast because I don't want to build it and take too long on it. I want to get to the next one. I have the idea in my head. I have what I need to execute that idea. Let me get it done and move on to the next one. And obviously will probably leave out some super minute details in it, but I'm not looking to have like John Tyson and Mike Buddy cars. Those look in the right photograph with the right lighting, the right background, could look like a real car. I don't need mine to look real. I just need mine to be like, oh, look at that shiny thing. That's amazing.
I mean, like, what's kind of crazy is you mentioned the Mike Buddy, John Tyson builds, and the stuff those two are pushing out are just crazy, unbelievably talented modelers. And Mike, the first time I met Mike was also at the RPM meet. And Mike has a habit of coming to Gulf Shores, Alabama. And
okay.
Which is not that far from Montgomery. And I'm going to call Mike out over the podcast for a second, because I'm sitting in St. Louis, Missouri. First time I've ever been to Missouri in my life. It's the farthest north I've been in my life. And I don't want any reminder of the state of Alabama. And there's Mike with a Gulf Shores, Alabama shirt on Saturday. And I walked up to him and I said, "You got some real nerve wearing that shirt in here." But I mean, the great guy, awesome guy. And the John Tyson stuff that he's putting out is, I can't wait to get my hands on some, because I know a buddy in the group is sending me one of the mail carriers to build.
Oh, nice.
I can't wait to build that one, because I've built the N-scale version of the Showcase Miniatures mail van, because Showcase Miniatures is actually 30 minutes in that direction from my house. So, and
nice.
me and the owners and I go way back. So I was one of the first to build the mail carrier, and that was an awesome kit in N-scale. And I saw the pre-production sample in HO, and I said, "Walter, this is going to sell out, because I can't tell you how many people have asked me, even at the RPM." Bob Johnson came up to me and said, "So, when is Showcase Miniatures going to do some HO scale maintenance away stuff?" And I was like, "Hold your horses, it's coming."
Nice.
There's a lot of stuff with that company that's coming down the pipeline, and the stuff that Walter and Debbie are working on, I can't say exactly what it is, but it's going to blow everyone's socks off, because we already know the GMCs that are coming, and we know about the mail carriers that just got released, and those look so good. Just wait.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see military stuff next, so maybe we might see.
It's funny you say that you're going to build a mail carrier, because somebody, as soon as John Tyson showed that I don't know if it was before it was finished photos or if it was the finished photos, somebody posted and then tagged me in the post of like a rat rod mail carrier. They're like, "Sam, you got to build this." And I said, "John, do you have a messed up piece of junk mold that doesn't look good that you just want to throw away?" Because I don't want something that's brand new and looks pristine, perfect. I need something that's completely came out the mold wrong.
That's the way to do it.
And he said he did, and we would work something out. But I think he came out with that thing last year, and we haven't worked anything out. But I'm not in any hurry to build it. If it gets built, it gets built. If it doesn't, oh well.
There was I've seen a couple of like the guys that have taken like the Grumman mail carriers, and they'll throw like a Hellcat engine in it or something crazy and take it to the drag strip. And you see people like, "Oh, it's just a mail carrier, don't worry." And they unleash that thing down there, and you see everyone dropping. And it was someone, I follow this guy on YouTube that's Regular Car Reviews. And he does,
I know that show.
Kind of like comedic car reviews, which I think his comedy is hilarious. But he did.
He's good.
I think it was the LS Winnebago that was sloppy, and and I'm sitting there going like, "Why does this exist?" Oh wait, because the car guys it's just the more expensive version of the 187 scale guys. And yeah, okay, so yeah, I'm not going insane for doing this hobby. I'm not going insane for spending $50 for a kit when I could be spending 50 grand on a car that I could wreck at a drag strip and
right. And think about, you spend 50 grand on a car, that's probably going to be your only car. When in this scale, you can spend $50 on a car and have a whole entire collection of custom cars you built.
Exactly, because the last thing I had sent to Ken was a video of my military train at the Model Train Club, and I'm up to pushing 30 cars now. And I said, "Ken, I think I have enough to officially invade your layout and take over. Watch your back."
Nice.
And I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, people have asked me, is like, why did you do it? There's so much other train stuff you could model, because I grew up around the steel mills and I could do the steel mill stuff, which I've done. And I said the reason why I did it because it almost puts a smile on my face when I have a veteran or an active service member come up to me and go, "Holy crap, you just nailed it."
Right. That's exactly it.
And I mean, it's, I don't normally give myself the pat on the back. I don't like gloating about my work because there are some amazing military modelers alike out there. And, Brian Daly, Mr. Juan from South America, Thomas from Germany, all y'all, John Velope, Robert, all y'all that I know y'all are all going to see the podcast, all y'all have absolutely helped me get to where I am today in this hobby. And even Paul Knowles is a military modeler. He just doesn't do as much as I do. Even he has helped me so much track down parts out of his spare parts box. We've traded kits. We've traded info. We fought over pictures at the RPM meet on who's going to buy what.
Nice.
He's got size. I've got wits and stamina on my side.
Right. That's funny. Yeah, that's why I build what I build. I looked at when I first joined this scale. I said, I'm going to bring my bigger model car skills to this scale because I know I can in the first place. And I want to try to build something that is unique. I don't want to do something that everybody else is doing, because if you look at pictures from the Amherst show from Massachusetts, you'll see that previous years, everybody that's laying anything on their table to display is all commercial, all of it. And there might be one or two passenger vehicles in there. And then that's excluding my buddy's passenger vehicles because he never really brings a lot, but what he brings is quality. So the people that do bring a lot will fill up a whole table full of diesel trucks and trailers. And not to say anything bad about them, but me, I'm not a big rig guy. I couldn't tell you one thing different about each one of those. They all look exactly the same to me. So when I first joined it, I did a little bit of research and I was like, what I do, nobody's really doing. I've got this market covered. Perfect. I'm going to do me and I'm just going to keep building. And just like how you said, you do it because you like building that. You said Navy? I don't know.
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps, yeah. You see how bad that memory is? You just said it like literally less than 5 minutes ago and I forgot it already. But yeah, the Marine Corps, and there's so many other things you could have done, but nobody's building the Marine Corps. So you got yourself your own little niche that you probably have, hands down, probably the only one doing it, if not the only one just posting and making it aware online that you're doing it. There could be other people doing it and just doing it in their closet and nobody even knows that they're building anything like that.
What was kind of interesting, you're not the only one who said that, because I've recently posted, there's an Arsenal M Facebook group that the owner had started up, and there's a couple of thousand of us in the group, and but only a handful of us from the US. And Arsenal M makes one of the best Oshkosh MTVR kits on the market. It's plastic. It trumps anything Trident ever put out there. And I posted, in a 4-day time span, I posted 7 different MTVR trucks that I built. And someone came forward and messaged me, and in the best way he could put in the English language, and he said, "You must be the only one in America actually buying the American trucks that Thomas is putting out." And I said, "I really hope I'm not, because he needs to keep producing this stuff because it's some of the best on the market."
Right.
And I would rather buy directly stateside, because when I order from Germany, you're waiting a month to get your package. And that was before the COVID stuff. My last order took 2 months here. And look at the DeLoreans you guys been buying. But
Right.
you know, I really, I really hope one day soon someone's going to pick up the Arsenal M line here in America and be a dealer. And I contemplated becoming a military dealer, but the market here in the U.S. is so small for that kind of stuff.
That's the problem.
It's a real niche market, just like your rat rods and stuff. There are only a few people
Yeah.
that would go their way to buy those, because how
Right.
many rods do you need on a model railroad? Well, how
All
many
of them. You need a million of them.
car, car
But you're right. You're 100% right, though, because I mean, I built stuff that kind of looked like you would have driven past a car show in today's time frame and saw all those cars all in a parking lot. That's the only reason you need any of the cars I'm building besides the movie cars is for like a car show scene. Other than that, you don't see them. I mean,
so
unless you live in Southern California, you don't see them anywhere else in this country just driving all around in lines and caravans and stuff.
that is true. So you said you're not. I'm gonna break away from my military stuff here for a hot second. You said you're not really into the 18-wheeler scene, but you like the movie cars. So what about the what was it? It was the Mac. I think it was a Mac R from Convoy. Do you remember that movie? Chris
Um,
Christopherson.
I'm not gonna lie, I've never watched that movie. I'm not a big rig guy.
Oh my
I
God.
have seen the preview many of times, and strangely enough, on whatever channel I'm listening to on the radio, once in a while that song comes on, and I don't know why, because I don't listen to that
See,
kind of, I don't
see,
listen to stations that would play that song, so I don't
it's
know why that song comes on, whatever I'm listening to,
an old
whenever
song,
I'm,
C.W. McCall, and I'm going to sound stereotypical Southerner redneck for saying that, but I love that song. But then you also got it was Steven Spielberg's first movie was actually a rogue trucker movie called Duel,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's really that's another thing about working in television is the two things we talk about in TV are food and movies. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk
We don't.
about religion. We don't talk about, well, some of us talk about guns, but the majority of it's food and TV and movies. And there's in my production department, there's kind of like a mini movie fan club where we rent out movies to one another. And
That's awesome.
the last crazy one that I saw was the first Death Race 2000.
Oh, that's the
And
only good one there was, in my opinion.
I had no idea Sylvester Stallone was in that movie. And
I
a
don't even remember he was in that movie.
very young Sylvester Stallone was in that movie. And that is one of the cheesiest car movies I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
It really is. But
But but the
it strangely enough holds itself in its own car niche of car movies.
it's a cult classic, simple as
Yeah,
that. I mean, it's the same as Taxi Driver. We all know Taxi Driver and the car that he drove. We
right.
all we have all seen Full Metal Jacket and Arlie Ermy yelling at Gomer Pyle, and seeing that movie, and but Duel was Spielberg's first movie, and um it was about a guy going on a road trip through SoCal, going back to LA, and he cuts off this old Peterbilt tank truck, and it
Right.
really pisses off the driver, and the driver's trying to actively kill him in the entire
Yeah.
movie. You never see the driver, you only see the truck. And I think that's one of the first movies where the truck is the villain.
Right. It's its own character. That's
Right.
what me and William were talking about. How movies back in any time before, say 1995, maybe anything before that, filmmakers made the car a character in itself.
I
And
forgot
that's what was awesome about movies back then, unlike today.
I forgot what the main character was driving. It was some little no-name
It's
sedan.
like I
It's
think
like
it's a Dart or a Dodge. It's some kind of red, salmon, orange looking four-door
ugly.
64, 65, 67
It's
Mopar car.
ugly. And when I saw that truck pushing the car towards the train, I was just praying for the train to take it out because it was so bad. But I mean,
Right.
the last time I saw an actor or a director actively try to do something like that in a movie would be the horrendously inaccurate train movie Unstoppable with Denzel Washington and Chris Pine, because the running
Yeah.
train was the villain. It
Right.
had
Yeah, it was. Well,
but
I think that's a remake of an 80s movie that was the same thing called Runaway Train or something.
Unstoppable was actually based off a true story. It was based off
Oh,
it was based off of a CSX incident back in the 90s where if I'm not mistaken, it was CSX 8888. It was a 40-2. It was a runaway, and they tried to shut off the emergency fuel valve with a shotgun, but it didn't. Of course, Hollywood took it and they just went in the opposite direction of what the movie, what the real life scenario really was.
that's what
Because
Hollywood does.
but I mean that's the last time I truly saw a piece of transportation be portrayed as
Right.
a because
Yeah, well, because even the Fast and Furious movies, the cars are nothing without the drivers. So the car itself isn't its own character. You have to have somebody driving the car, which is another famous actor portraying, whatever the stupid role of that movie asks for, and then they introduce a car that they can drive, a cool car, whatever. But the car itself isn't the character. It's the actor driving the car.
I did like those muscle cars in the second one when they're in Miami. It was the red, it was like the orange and the blue muscle cars.
Yeah. They had
Those,
they had
those
some the muscle cars were the best part of that movie because the import cars they had, the Subaru and they Mitsubishis, those were stupid. Those cars were dumb. The whole movie was dumb.
you, and they're making another for some reason. But
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 here's a funny little side note, though. I don't know if you're aware of. Um, Whoever made the movie, Universal, Sony, whoever, they made a little side movie, I think, after the second movie came out of how Paul Walker got from LA to Miami and how he hustled his way in street races with the old beat up car and then found the car he uses in the beginning of the second movie, which was the Skyline. He finds a Skyline in a junkyard in the middle of the desert for like super cheap. And then he just street races until he can build it up better and better and then ends up in Miami. It was a stupid little 20-minute video that they made.
that
You
one,
can find it. I think, I don't have no idea what it's called, but if you looked up, I'm sure the whole entire video is on YouTube because it was only like 20 minutes. But just type in like how Paul Walker got from LA to Miami in Fast and Furious, and that's the only thing that's going to come up. But yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting little side note.
yeah, I definitely got to look that one up. But I mean, to me, it's the whole culture of the 187 group and all the modelers that we have is just something I wouldn't trade for the world in this hobby, because at the end of the day, it, on any given day, I've got like probably two or three people who might message me and say, "Hey, Rad, do you recommend this? Where can I find this? Hey,
That's awesome.
I've got this tank. What can I paint it in? How can I make it look unique?" And I owe all the info I've acquired over the years to not only the HO scale guys, but all the vets that I've worked with and the guys in the milsim community that I'm still friends with and I still actively participate in. If I didn't decide one day in high school, I want to pay money to get BB shot at me and to get yelled at by some old drill sergeant on a weekend, and I want to inhale smoke and curse and eat MREs because I mean I'm type 1 diabetic. I can't serve. So that's as closest to serving as I can possibly get. And to be able to work with the veterans and kind of hear their stories and learn how they work, dude, it is so cool. And it doesn't sound like fun to everyone. It is not for everyone because I've seen people cry, grown men cry and walk off the field because they couldn't take getting yelled at. And I've
Right.
seen, and I've seen some pretty horrific injuries from the sport also. I've seen guys with got their eyes shot out. I've seen guys get concussions. I've seen broken bones. I've seen some
Wow.
pretty cool stuff. it can get pretty,
Well,
it's a dangerous
I will,
hobby.
yeah, it's, and I would say those people are service members that go into the field, and even the ones that don't go in the field just to protect whatever. They're a different kind of human, really. I mean, to go through the training to begin with, which is you look at the training and then you dissect it, and you think that's superhuman. I mean, I couldn't do it. My brother went into the Marines, and he was smaller than I am, and he was skinnier than I am. I said, "There's no way he's going to finish this." He finished it like 30 pounds lighter, but he finished it, and that blew my mind that somebody so small and so skinny could have actually did that, and he did it, and he became a Marine. I that was one of like proudest things he's ever done in his whole life, in
The
my
one,
opinion, that he actually finished boot camp.
the one that got me, and I'm not really one to show that much emotion when I'm out there in the field like that, because a lot of the vets also don't. And you, you got monkey see what monkey do. You got to follow what they do. Well,
Right, don't cry.
right. The one that honestly got me and my buddy John was we were on Overwatch, and I just finished my first round of military models, and he's sitting there on my smartphone scrolling through them, and I'm like, "Shouldn't you be watching for the enemy?" He's like, "Yeah, man, in a minute, we're all good, it's okay." And
That's funny.
he's like, "Okay, yeah, I need that Leopard tank you just did for the German army. I need that Abrams you just did. I need that." And
He's
he's
more
saying,
worried about the models than he is what he needs to be doing.
and then we start hearing this thing coming up the road, and it sounded like it was on tracks, but we didn't have any tracked vehicles on any team. And I said, "John, I hear something on tracks because it's a very distinctive noise." Um, and he said, "Yeah, I hear it too." And we turned to the right with our rifles, and we're honed in down, we're zeroed in right where we're hearing the noise come from. And we see this man in a tracked powered wheelchair, missing
Oh,
missing both of his legs with a minigun attached to it. And
oh wow.
he's wearing our uniform, our multicam uniform. And I'm sitting here going, "John, um, I'm sorry, have I inhaled too much smoke from the smoke grenade?
Am I seeing what I'm seeing?
Or is this guy driving a tank?" And he says, "Bro, I don't know what to classify that." So we got off our roost and we went down there and met up with him. And this guy did 2 tours in Iraq, got blown up, lost both of his legs, but still wanted to fight. And he was the one, you know, I don't know whatever happened to him, and I really wish I could find this guy because he sat there and told John and I so many stories. And he was so interesting to talk to. And that's the coolest thing is, man, like with your brother, I'm pretty sure your brother could tell you some crazy stories out of basic, because I've heard some crazy stories come from my friends from basic. But I mean, sitting down and listening to some of the stories these guys tell, you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, and you're going to say, "Wow, you need to write a book."
Right.
Because some of the
They all
crazy,
need their own movie.
they really do, because these are some of the craziest people I've ever been around, but they are some of the most interesting. And it takes a special human being to say, "I'm going to sign a 5-year contract to get shot at for a living. Let's go."
Right.
And my hat's off to every single one of them. And that's a huge reason why I model what I model, because I love it when my buddy from the 11th ACR sends me photos from the motor pool, and he says, "So, you want a new project?" And I said, "Please, no, I've already got 60 projects. But I
Right.
really don't need an, ooh, that looks cool. I need to model that."
Right.
It's that
That's
kind of stuff there that's just, if it wasn't for the vets that I know and I've met over the years, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I'd probably be doing the same as all the Amherst guys, trucks and commercial vehicles, because that's the only other thing that I know.
right, right. Well, and I've asked several of the people I've interviewed already, like, what is it about the specific era and genre of models that they build, that's why they build. Like, what do they like about it? Why do they build that instead of anything else? And your story of what you just said is a perfect example of why you build it and why you love it. And honestly, it's inspiring to hear, like what you said, to see what you build, and to hear it from you, the builder, because the passion you have for it, and your passion for it is such a good passion. It's for all the vets and all the service people, you build because of what you love, and if you didn't love it, you wouldn't be building nearly as many of them, or probably anything nearly as good as you are. And to talk to people like how we are now, to hear their view on the model world and their passion for it, it's awesome. It's so, I think when people listen to it, when they watch these, it brings, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. It just enthusiasm and excitement to that world, because I don't know nothing about the world that you build in, but listening to it, I mean, we've been talking this long. I honestly think this might be the longest podcast I've done so far. I haven't been bored not once. And I'll tell you what, looking at military stuff doesn't excite me in any way. So listening to your enthusiasm about it, it's keeping me wanting to ask questions and wanting to know more.
Well, I tell you, well, you asked what really got me into it, and there's always been a love of military vehicles. It was just John who kind of kicked me in the rear to build what I build now. But what set me on the path of military in general for anything, train wise, Hot Wheel cars. If growing up, I had tons of Hot Wheel Matchbox cars, of course.
Oh, I think we all did.
I always went for the Hummers. I went for the tanks, the A-10 Warhogs, that kind of stuff. Because growing up, we had, yet again, I'm going to sound really stereotypical Alabama for saying this. There was a diabetic fundraiser called Kiss a Pig in downtown Montgomery. And you had different diabetic families raise money, and they had a celebrity kiss a potbelly pig. It was the weirdest. It was a local celebrity. I think it was like one of our news anchors. It was the weirdest thing ever. And they did it more than 1 year too. I think I still have the T-shirt. But it was held at the Union Station train shed in downtown Montgomery, and CSX runs right by the train shed. And I remember that day in particular because it was shortly after 9/11, and in a 1 day period that we sat down there, I remember seeing 7 loaded DoD trains pass by, and they were all going for the Portomobile, and they were all going to Iraq.
Wow.
It was everything. Of course, the few pictures I have of the train are just from around the event. Where it's friends and family, and you see the train in the background, you see some Humvees and Paladins and all that kind of stuff, and remembering that's really what set me on the path to where I am with, and then years later, having a job and having a little cash in my pocket, and some stubborn veteran friends kick me in the backside and say, "Go build."
That's awesome.
That's what set me to the point, and it's like a drug habit. It takes up your time and money.
It does. But it's a healthy hobby, because you could literally be spending all this money on drugs and you're not.
And that's the thing. I really hope the next generation continues what we're doing. And I meet people like Robert Kelly, the other crane guys, about Tom.
That's who I was talking about. Robert Kelly, not Thomas Kelly. Robert Kelly. Sorry, Robert.
looking at Robert, looking at Tom Hart, those are the only guys around my age group that I know that are in this hobby. Tom.
Yeah, there's not very many.
No, I say Tom's. I'm 27. He just graduated high school, so he's not really my age group. But I think Tom is the youngest modeler in our group.
There
know, 'cause
used to be a guy, what is his name? He built commercial big rigs. That was his thing. What was his name? He was young though. He was just entering high school. I think he just graduated high school now. He's got this big red truck. I'm friends with him on Facebook.
because you've also got Lucas Gresham out of, I believe, South Carolina was doing a lot of maintenance away stuff with his model railroad. And I believe he and Jesse Waglin were friends. But I don't see much from Lucas anymore. And I mean, I really love following what everyone else is doing. Because I mean, sometimes, you know, if I post like 6 or 7 military pictures, I'm sitting here going like, oh wow, I really hope I'm not posting too much. I really kind of feel bad here. But then I see the work you do and the work Brian and them do, and I'm just, oh man, I tell you, one of these days we just need to do a 187 scale convention.
Right,
And
that's what I'm saying.
And just to have it somewhere, not Amherst, not St. Louis, not, you know, just somewhere where we have our own vendors and our own models and
Right.
our forums, and we
And maybe we can do it like a 3-day or possibly 4-day, because if we were to figure out something like that and we got everybody or most people that are in the 187 scale group on the 187 scale club website involved in going to this and bringing all their models, we would have way too much to look at in like a 1.5 day weekend. So we would possibly need more days to like get through everybody's tables and to talk to everybody.
That's kind of how I felt about the RPM in St. Louis, because that was a Friday, Saturday show, and
Yes, it is.
you and I were there both days. But
Yeah.
you know, I walked through Friday and I'm like, okay, it's a good sized show. Saturday, it just got slammed packed with tons of models, and
Right.
I didn't have time to look at everything. I didn't even go to any of the clinics because
I don't ever go to those clinics. They're talking about train stuff and it doesn't really apply to me.
I think next year, I know one of the guys who's in charge of those, and they want me to do a military how-to clinic. So I think that's going to come.
Cool.
They were talking about this year, but unfortunately, thanks, Rona.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but I mean, you know, it's that kind of stuff right there that there's more to it. And you know, someone could do a maintenance away clinic, someone could do a rat rod clinic, military.
Yeah.
You know,
Who would do that rat rod clinic? I'm gonna have to reach out to somebody.
you know, I mean, this guy, you know, his name escapes me. He wears this crazy fedora everywhere
I
he goes.
never remember his name, and I'm always talking about him. No,
You know,
that would be totally awesome if we could figure something else like that out, and we could get so many of us that are in this little club of ours to join and participate. I think would be unbelievably awesome.
we put all the work off on Bob Johnson.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Bob, get on, do it.
But that's crazy too, though. Like, I would love to have him on this little podcast, but I've emailed him twice, and I heard at the last RPM meet last year, he had got this new job, and he's super busy with it, so he barely has time to even update the website because he's so busy. And I think he's just too busy to answer the email. I don't know, but I know he's super busy with his job, so I don't know if he has time to do anything.
He's also doing work for River Point Station because he's in charge of the RPS website. Because I mean, he brought those pre-production samples to the show last year, and because I'd never met Bob in my life. We had talked on the phone a few times, but I'm setting up all my stuff, and I mean, of course, me being the military, crazy military gun nut, I'm easy to pick out in a crowd. Well, Bob walks up to me with the 2 trucks in his hand. He's like, Radisson, here's a piece of paper. Here are these pre-production samples. Take these, keep them for as long as you want today, and bring them back to me and tell me what you see wrong with them. And I'm like, what? Who are you?
Oh, nice.
You know? And sure,
cool.
I don't really have a need for them anymore because for my main model railroad, I'm now in scale for space restraints. But I mean, I'll probably buy some of the Chevys because I'm a Chevy fan. You
Oh,
know,
I'm a Chevy guy too.
it's just cool looking
Yeah.
truck. I mean, I'm Chevy for life. I hate Ford and I hate Dodge. Sorry,
I
guys.
don't hate neither of them, but I lean way more towards GM vehicles. I mean, my most favorite vehicle of all time is a Chevy Impala 64, 63. So I've got the Impala uh, tattoo on my back. I like it so much.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, GM vehicles by far outweigh all other brands unless you need to have a rat rod from the 19 mid 20s to the 19 mid 30s, and then you got to go Ford. You have
So,
to.
like next car show we have here in Montgomery, I've got to get some shots for you because we have some very unique builds here. And there's some. One of them is it's a VW Bug. The guy chopped in two, and it's half VW Bug, half motorcycle. And it's
Oh,
the
like
most
a trike.
it is the most badass truck I've ever seen in my life. And if that's not something you would build, then you know.
That's funny you say that. There's a guy in Hungary. His name is Basil or Basil's, and he builds or he created some photo etch hot rod parts. And then he also does photo etch garage parts like tool cases and stuff. And I found him early on when I joined the scale, and he just started creating those, I think, like just in production. And I ordered like 3 sets of each hot rod sheet he had. The sheets are only like this big, but in that bigness is full of hot rod parts, little tiny tools or little tiny mirrors or little tiny whatever. And he had built a Volkswagen trike. I don't know how, I know he started with a Volkswagen, obviously. But I don't know what he did for the rest of the build because
Insane.
that thing didn't, it was a motorcycle, but it was all scratch built or something. And I thought, that is so neat that he did that. I mean, I've always heard and seen the idea in the model car world, or never actually seen it with my own eyes in person, but I've always seen like illustrations throughout my life. But he actually built it, and then this small scale, and I was like, what? That guy's amazing.
Well, I tell you the one that was. Now I'm going to play commercial advertisement here for a second, but if you want some really cool detail parts in HO for your garage or car stands and stuff like that, Showcase Miniatures. They make a lift rack for the cars for like the used car dealerships or garages, and it's an
Yeah,
amazing fit.
I've
They
got I've got one of their sets.
yeah,
It's like a 1950s garage setup.
yeah, it is awesome, and it's extremely easy to build. It looks intimidating, but the kits are a lot easier, and once you get into the swing of things, you'll knock them out in a day. Knowing
Oh
me, you'll
yeah.
probably knock them like an hour. But but I
Well,
mean,
that's the thing I want with 3D printing. I want the the image of that part, say the toolbox. I want to slide it over to the printer icon and then just click it and it print it for me and it's done. That's what
well,
I want. That's how easy I want this system to get to. It's not there yet, but that's what I want.
I think I can kind of feel safe saying this. The next 187 scale military project I'm working on, I sat down recently with some buddies of mine in the military group, and we were talking back and forth, and they're like, "Wow, man, you've built Abrams, you've built armored D9s, you've built every Humvee variant known to man. What are you going to build next?" And I said, "I don't know. I kind of want to build some kind of aircraft." And here in Montgomery, we have an Air Force base, and they've got a heavy lift wing with C-130 aircraft. And one of the C-130s I recently photographed is in the 75th anniversary D-Day invasion strike paint scheme when they flew it over.
Oh,
And
cool.
one of my coworkers is he works on base because he's the Air Force's PR officer. And I'm currently going through the background channels to get on base to photograph this plane because the next project I'm going to work on is a 187 scale C-130, and it's all 3D printed. That
Oh, nice.
we're looking at about a 4 foot wingspan,
Wow.
4 feet,
And
2 feet off of each, 2 feet off the fuselage in each direction. It is
that's going
going.
to be a big model.
It is going to be massive. But my
How
goal,
many tanks can fit into that?
you can't put a
I
tank
know
in a
you know.
you can't put a tank in a C-130.
Oh, okay.
You can put
Something with that big of a wingspan, you think you should be able to.
the C. Now, I think it's the C-17 Global Masters. I think you can put two Abrams tanks in that. I have to double check on that one because I've seen them drop. It's kind of weird because the Airborne Division out in Georgia recently got they are called LAVs, and your brother and the people out in California would probably really know these. This is an amphibious assault vehicle.
I've seen those.
They're
Yeah.
the Marine Corps used to be the only ones that had these, but the Army recently got their hands on 12 of them. They did a trade with the Marines. I forgot what they gave. Maybe they gave the Marines a bunch of crayons. I'm not sure, but the 82nd Airborne got. I think it's the 82nd got 12 of these because the Stryker LAVs are heavier and bigger than the standard USMC versions. So they can actually put more of these in a cargo plane than they can the Stryker. And so that's a little side note. And also the Marine Corps is getting rid of the Abrams tanks. The armor division of the U.S. Marine Corps is out the door for some reason, which sucks for me because that's what I model is an armor division of the U.S. Marine Corps. So
Right, right.
I'm modeling a modern train. But that there are with the C-130, my plan with that one is it's going to be because it's 3D printed. There is no interior to it, and to scratch build an interior for that would be more work than I'm willing to put into it. So it's going to basically all the doors and hatches will be closed up on it, and it's just going to be runway.
Yeah.
But
That's probably a smart idea.
yeah, I want to build one of those, and I want to build an A-10 Warthog because the A-10s, they're tank killers, and those are just cool planes to me. And eventually, get into the others, but I'm going to have to find some more shelf space than my little itty bitty shelf right here to keep all that stuff.
Yeah, you should find yourself a display case like one of those two.
My next goal, because I'm fast running out of room. But
So before I let you go, I know you've probably seen it. Trying to figure out where it is in my display case because I know it. Oh, here we go. I don't know what this thing is called. Tom Hart gave it to me, and
we go.
I made it into a hot rod. But it's like a dragon or something, like an AA dragon. I don't know what you call that thing.
Yeah, that's a
But
Dragon Wagon.
yeah, he gave it to me, and he said, "Do something with this." So then I had a little Jeep on there that I slammed. So that's laying on the ground, and then it's being pulled or hauled by that thing.
The Dragon Wagon was a World War II truck and trailer, and they hauled tanks. Um, today the military knows them as HEP, made by Oshkosh. But the Dragon Wagons, to me, they were like the first generation armored truck because of the crazy slanted angles. And all these slanted angles on military vehicles, they're there to deflect bullets.
Oh, okay.
If I shoot into a brick wall, it's going to go through that brick wall. If I shoot at a slanted piece of metal, it's going to ding up.
Right.
So that's why you see a lot of crazy slants and angles like you do on military vehicles. But the Dragon Wagons, that is a wicked truck. And there are a few of those that are fully restored out there in the private collector sector that are just beautiful pieces of equipment. But I would not want to be anywhere near that thing when it's moving because your vision inside that truck is almost non-existent.
Oh yeah, so because I didn't know what that truck was, he just gave it to me and said, "Here, build this into like a hot rod or something. Do something with this." I had to look it up, and when I looked it up, the first thing that comes up is the real cars or just illustrations of it, and that thing is monstrous.
Oh yeah. Well,
And then you sit so far back into the cab, but yeah, your vision is like nothing. You can't see too far in front of you. You have to see way out there because you can't see like right over the hood. And then you can't see on the side of you because you're so wide. It's like driving, I don't know what it'd be like driving, like driving a train on the road or something.
oh God, no. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the World War II stuff is just totally a category within themselves. And I haven't attempted to build any World War II stuff. The latest I've built is the 1970s, the Vietnam era. But which I mean, yeah, that there were still some Sherman tanks and some World War II Jeeps in that era, but very few and far between. But I mean, I guess in a nutshell, it's just kind of crazy how, you know, no matter where you look in this hobby, you can see something military is somewhere in this collection. Because, like, for example, you just rat rotted a dragon wagon, and
Right.
yeah, I've seen some guys have military surplus trucks on their layout at a construction site or a city site because that's a common scene. You know, the police departments have Humvees now for search and rescue operations. You know, and then they have Bearcats and MRAPs for riot operations. And at the end of the day, the only difference is a paint and decal job, and that's what makes this hobby cool.
Yeah. Check this out. You're gonna either love it or you're gonna hate it because it's just like that. So Ken asked me when I was going to build a train. So last year, the end of the year, I took this dummy engine and I built myself a hot rod uh, not train car, but train engine.
Oh
So it's
my
got this,
God, it's an Alco S12 on steroids.
yeah, it's
Oh no,
got,
it's
yeah,
an S2.
I don't, dude, I have no idea. I don't know these train engines, but I just
You've got
picked
a
the biggest engine I could find and I
you put
slapped it in one of the smallest train engines I can get. And then I put some custom metal flake paint on it, decals, chromed out everything that I could chrome out. And then I even put little people in the interior if the light shows.
you put a the engine you put in that is
Oh,
a
it doesn't go in there. It's way too big.
it's an EMD 567, I think. That's one of the it's one of the biggest engines you could put in something like that. But that's
Yeah.
definitely a crazy
And then
build.
if you think about like hot rods and rat rods, that's what they're doing. They're trying to put the biggest and most horsepower engine in like one of the smallest cars ever, which would be like a Ford Model A, Model T or something.
Yeah,
So
definitely. But hey, man,
yeah.
thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. And you know, I mean,
Oh, definitely.
looking forward to seeing more of the podcast and seeing who else you can get on here. And you know, we need to harass Bob Johnson and Paul Knowles.
Yes, we do. Well, I want to thank you as well for being on here. I had Robert Kelly on a couple nights ago. His podcast will come up, be downloaded shortly. Well, shortly within like a week or two, I think. I don't know. And I was thinking, and he was thinking the same thing, like, what could I possibly talk about that's going to keep me, enthused enough to want to keep asking questions and have this podcast go longer. And I was thinking the same thing, but not being in the crane world at all, not caring anything about cranes, I thought I was going to be bored to death. But his enthusiasm, his knowledge about it kept me going. Like, I liked listening to him talk about his passion for it. And just like you, I'm honest when I say this, I don't care nothing for military vehicles. I know what some of them are, but I don't care about them at all. But listening to your passion, listening to the way you speak about them, it's so enthusing. It makes this podcast, I think it makes the podcast good. I mean, you get so much wealth of information and knowledge that I wasn't bored at all. I wasn't bored when Robert was talking. which I thought I was going to be. And then I wasn't bored when you were talking. I
Well,
mean, I didn't think I was going to be bored. I just didn't think I was going to be super involved because I don't know anything. It's not like my field of vehicles that I know anything to talk about or to even ask about.
I'm really hoping, I'm really hoping next summer they're able to do the RPM in St. Louis, and all of us get back together again, and we can do some kind of massive, podcast
Yeah.
with each other. I think that would be something pretty beneficial, because I mean, a lot of us, we only see each other maybe once every year or every other year now. But I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this kind of stuff come out, because at the end of the day, I could spend 12 hours talking about every single piece of my collection, but I don't have that much cell phone battery, you know. Uh,
Right.
but at the end of the day, I mean, this has been a great experience, man, and what you're doing here is just awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I kind of thought too, how cool would it be that if you were building a car or if you were driving somewhere, you would have something to listen to or something to watch and listen to. I mean, you don't even have to watch this because there's no I don't have no editing skills, so I'm not embedding photos on top of our interview of your builds or nothing. But it's just the information in the verbalness of what we're talking about and the love for this hobby that I thought if people didn't watch it, they could at least listen to it and then have something interesting to listen to that involves the love and the hobby that they're doing, that they're in.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. That's
So
definite.
yeah, this was fun, man. I enjoyed it. I really did. I think other people are gonna be enjoying it too when they get to listen to this.
Well,
This
thank
was
you.
very interesting. You're a wealth of information.
I mean, I think I hold the record for useless encyclopedia knowledge of military vehicles and its history at this point, but, but
Well, maybe you and Tom Hart. I don't know.
um,
I haven't spoke to Tom yet with the podcast. So I don't know how much we're going to talk about what, but
gonna make I'm gonna make
he's
him do
due to
the
be on
entire
here.
podcast.
So
I'm gonna make him do the entire podcast in his bad Russian accent for you. Listen to it. America needs to listen to it because it's bad. It's really bad. But
hey, at least he's trying.
but thank you again for having me on the show, man. And good luck with future builds and everything. And hope we can talk again.
Yeah, man. Awesome.
All right,
Well,
man.
everybody, this is the end of the podcast. So you all have a good night.